The story is set in a brutal world where the blood of the weak is constantly spilled by the strong. In this place, only the most powerful can drink of that blood and survive amidst the chaos. In a dark, dense forest, a creature that looks like a deer is feeding peacefully. But what it doesn't know is that it's being watched and has already been marked as prey by hunters. Hidden in the bushes, our main character gets ready to shoot as someone advises him to stay calm. He then pulls the bowstring back with all his might, preparing for the perfect shot. His companion gives the signal, and he lets the arrow fly toward the defenseless animal. However, right as he shoots, a loud sound echoes through the forest, and the creature gets spooked by the noise. In desperation, the older man shouts the protagonist's name, which is Johan. Johan appears with a sheepish grin, holding the broken bow, while his master chews him out for the failure. He tries to defend himself, saying the bow broke way too easily, but his master snaps back that he bought it just a week ago. The older hunter starts to tear up, complaining that Johan, as a noble, shouldn't be so fixated on being a hunter. He goes on, saying the young man could have learned to use swords instead of a bow. Hearing the complaints, Johan stays silent for a moment, a serious expression on his face. Then he replies that being a swordsman doesn't pay the bills until you land a gig. The master agrees on the money issue, and the two decide to move to another spot to hunt. The MC reflects that he needs money to survive in this rotten, broken world. We find out his name is Johan Ates, and that he was reincarnated into this world after an accident in his past life. Despite being reborn as a noble, he's at the bottom of the family totem pole and won't inherit a thing. Back in the present, his companion warns him as a pack of wild wolves appears in front of them. The wolves then charge furiously, baring their sharp teeth at the two hunters in the clearing. Without a second thought, the older hunter turns tail and flees in terror, leaving Johan behind. But the protagonist remains calm and begins to reflect on the nature of the world he's been reborn into. He understands that this place is a very realistic and grim representation of a cruel medieval era. The cruelty is so great that even those who have passed on don't seem to find rest in this desolate place. His companion wonders if the bodies are from their village, but Johan says it's impossible to know. The young man then states with certainty that in this world, the weak are just prey for the strong to feed on. With that in mind, he clenches his fist, determined not to become one of those easy targets. To avoid that fate, he shouts with glowing eyes that the only thing he needs is a whole lot of money. He remembers that when he first arrived, he hoped for some special skill or a status window, but since none of that happened, he changed his main goal to one single thing: making bank. With cash, he could leave this territory and do whatever he wanted, like become a merchant or a farmer. While he's lost in his greedy thoughts, his master calls him over to see something he found nearby. The hunter shows him a rare medicinal herb called imp's grass, which is great for stopping bleeding. Without hesitation, Johan snatches the plant from his hand, thinking only of how expensive and valuable it must be. With a hilarious look on his face, he mentally thanks him for the cash, leaving his companion completely speechless. A moment later, Johan points to a small pouch on the ground, saying the master dropped something. He picks up the pouch, but the hunter says it isn't his and finds it strange, since no one else goes this deep into the forest. Suddenly, the master looks shocked, his eyes wide as if he's realized something terrible. The two look up, startled, as they hear a strange noise coming from the darkness of the forest. All of a sudden, a desperate voice echoes through the trees, screaming for help as it runs aimlessly. Hearing the screams and the growls of the wolves, Johan and his companion look toward the sound, terrified. They then spot a little girl cornered up in a tree, surrounded by the pack of furious wolves. The master recognizes her as Dell, Robert's daughter, and wonders what a child is doing so deep in the woods. The wolves seem bigger and more aggressive than usual, baring their teeth and snarling at the girl. Terrified, the hunter says they can't handle so many wolves on their own and suggests falling back to get help. But Johan stops him from running and decides to move toward the danger, much to the older man's surprise. Joseph yells that it's dangerous since wolves are predators of humans, but the protagonist reassures him. The young man says he'll distract the pack so his companion can rescue the girl safely. The hunter is stunned, unable to believe that a noble would offer himself as bait to save a commoner. However, Johan has a sly grin on his face, because he's realized this situation is a gold mine. He counts at least 10 wolves, and already starts calculating the profit he'll make selling all their pelts. With an ear-to-ear grin, he gets ready to face his precious little money makers. Seeing the young man's attitude, his companion is completely confused, with no idea what's going on. Then the protagonist draws his sword with a strange stance, and Joseph questions his sloppy swordsmanship. Wasting no time, the beasts charge toward him, ready for the imminent attack. The young man moves in a blur of speed to intercept the animal's attack. He manages to block the first wolf with his sword, holding back the ferocious creature's charge. The beast bites down hard on the blade, trying to break it with its fangs. Unwilling to let go, it continues to put pressure on the sword with its jaw. To the protagonist's surprise, the sword shatters from the force of the wild wolf's bite. Before he can react, another creature attacks him from the side, its mouth wide open, ready to bite. Amidst the chaos of the battle, the young man is surrounded by the wild beasts in a brutal scene. Joseph watches in horror and screams Johan's name in despair, fearing the worst. Meanwhile, somewhere else, events are unfolding in a very different way. In the Eight's territory, the noble family is conducting an inspection of Baltroden village with a large entourage. The poor, dirty villagers bow their heads in fear as the noble's procession passes by. An older man hugs a child, trying to shield her from the scene of oppression and misery all around. One of the concubines, named Madame Eights, complains about the foul smell coming from the commoners gathered there. The family's eldest son, Philip Eights, observes the scene with a serious and indifferent expression. The lord of the territory, Jason Eights, also complains about the stench of the place, calling it a miserable field. Philip informs his father that Johan isn't present and offers to send soldiers to find him. Jason Eights explodes with fury upon learning of his youngest son's absence during the important inspection. He yells that he doesn't care about Johan and that the boy can meet the same tragic end as his mother. With an expression of contempt, the lord of the territory continues to curse and belittle his absent son. Suddenly, Jason halts his horse, noticing a huge pile of hay at the village entrance. He questions what it is, and one of the villagers kneels, begging for forgiveness before explaining the situation. The villagers say they covered Johan's training traps because they thought they were ugly. Jason scoffs at the idea of Johan training and calls his son a pathetic insect as he looks at the hay. But as he looks closer, his expression changes when he sees what was hidden underneath. Beneath the hay, he finds several wooden logs with deep marks from punches and kicks all over them. Jason is shocked to see the number of destroyed logs and wonders what in the world this is. Back in the forest, Johan is down on the ground as the wolves surround him, biting him relentlessly. One of the beasts approaches to deliver the final blow, but stops suddenly as if something is wrong. Then Johan grabs the wolf's jaw and says that fighting with swords isn't really his style. With incredible strength, he throws the creature far away, putting the other animals on alert. The protagonist grins and says that now he'll fight his own way, calling the wolves his little cash machines. He knows that in this world, it's survival of the fittest, and to avoid becoming prey, he needs cash. And to get that cash, he needs something more as the pack moves in for the attack. He then clenches his fist tightly, preparing to show his true combat ability. What he needs is overwhelming strength, capable of transcending the limits of an ordinary human being. Joseph watches the scene, completely shocked and unable to understand what's happening. With a direct punch, Johan lands a solid hit on a wolf's face, which barely has time to react. The impact is so powerful that it sends several other wolves flying through the air with extreme ease. The young man grabs another animal by the neck, displaying a terrifying and colossal physical strength. In a quick and brutal scene, he delivers a final, decisive blow to the defenseless creature. The wolf's body falls lifeless to the ground, to the astonishment of Joseph, who watches from a distance. The older hunter can't believe his eyes and wonders where that incredible strength comes from. Johan smiles amidst the bodies of the wolves, thinking about how much money he'll get for all those pelts. A memory shows that he had to accept from an early age that life in this new world wouldn't be easy. His older brothers constantly mistreated him, calling him a bastard and humiliating him for not having a mother. Because they held a higher rank, they tormented and beat him whenever they felt like showing off. Lying on the ground, young Johan realized just how cruel this world was, and that no one would care about him. He then understood that the only person he could rely on to survive here was himself. With that in mind, he started thinking about what he would need to get by in this medieval world. Fortunately, the protagonist had a major advantage: the knowledge from his past life as a student. Because of this, his head held wisdom that people of that era couldn't even imagine. So, he decided to use all this knowledge to his advantage, starting with high-intensity training. The boy also created a balanced diet with superfoods, to the amazement of those who saw him eat. He also created an exercise regimen based on modern science and practiced martial arts up close. And so, his continuous training piled up over many years of dedication. After all that time, an older and stronger Johan could shatter tree trunks with a single punch. His determined expression showed the results of all his effort as he continued to train. The force of his blows was so absurd that he could rip an entire tree out of the ground. With each training session, his body demonstrated even more overwhelming strength, and he felt renewed. Amidst the destroyed logs, he wondered if this strength was a blessing or a new challenge in his life. Back in the present, in the forest, a growling sound echoes through the darkness after the intense battle. The protagonist breathes a sigh of relief, looking at his hand as he recovers from the fight against the beasts. He observes the wolves' bodies on the ground and concludes that this seems to be the last of the pack. Meanwhile, Joseph hugs little Dell, who is crying with relief at being saved from danger. Joseph sighs in relief, but still looks completely exhausted and shaken by the whole situation. He then turns to Johan and scolds him, saying his actions were very reckless and dangerous. But right after, the hunter is moved and thanks the young man for saving the girl without a second thought. However, the protagonist is in his own world, imagining which wolf pelt will fetch the most cash. He asks what Joseph said, and then turns to Dell to see if she got hurt anywhere. Suddenly, the little girl's eyes go wide, and an expression of pure terror takes over her face. Behind them, a giant shadow with red eyes appears and lets out a hair-raising growl. Johan and Joseph turn around, confused, while Dell covers her face with her hands, unable to watch. The creature shows its sharp teeth and its furious gaze in the darkness of the dense forest. A monstrous, enormous wolf emerges before Johan, appearing to be the leader of the pack he defeated. Joseph screams in complete panic, realizing they are facing a real monster. He grabs the girl and warns that they need to run, as only an army could handle that thing. But the protagonist smiles and turns to the creature, asking if it's the boss of this crew. He apologizes for taking out the monster's underlings and mentions their pelts are worth a lot. The giant beast stares at the young man with a look of pure hatred, its eyes glowing an intense red. Johan realizes the monster sees him as prey, and a confident smile appears on his face. The creature then opens its massive mouth and lets out a deafening roar that echoes throughout the forest. Unfazed, the protagonist charges toward the beast, saying it doesn't matter what it is. The young man picks up a giant rock from the ground and yells that this thing's pelt will be worth way more money. Then, with superhuman strength, he hurls the rock, which smashes right into the monster's head. The rock hits the monster square on, and it lets out a roar of pain and fury from the direct impact. But Johan yells in frustration because he scratched the animal's pelt, complaining that the price will drop now. With its red eyes glowing with hatred, the creature glares at the protagonist, growling furiously. Then the beast opens its mouth and lets out a powerful howl that seems to shake the entire forest. The sound is so intense that the protagonist covers his ears with his hands, feeling unbearable pain. Meanwhile, Joseph hugs the little girl tightly to try and protect her from the deafening noise. Johan grinds his teeth and writhes in pain, as the monster's howl seems to affect his mind directly. He feels dizzy and his vision starts to blur as he wonders what's happening to him. Suddenly, A strange vision of two warriors fighting with swords flashes abruptly in his mind. The scene is so intense and real that the young man screams in despair, feeling the pain of that ancient memory. Soon after, he collapses to the ground, panting and confused, wondering what just happened to him. Still a bit dizzy, he looks around and wonders where the monster that was in front of him went. To his surprise, the creature has simply vanished without a trace in the dark forest. He then spots Joseph and Dell on the ground, fast asleep, as if they had passed out. The protagonist approaches and realizes they are just sleeping, and that everyone is safe now. He doesn't know what happened but carries Joseph to head back, as other monsters might show up. The young man then hoists the hunter onto his shoulders and starts walking through the dark forest. As he walks, he laments not being able to take the wolf pelts, but promises to come back with a cart later. The night deepens, and the full moon lights their path through the trees of the gloomy forest. As he nears the village, he notices the lights are on and wonders if they're looking for Dell. He then starts fantasizing that his father would praise him and name him his successor in front of everyone. But he quickly dismisses the idea and thinks that maybe he can at least get a position in the guard to keep from starving. However, as he gets closer to the village, he notices something strange, and his expression changes completely. The light of a lit torch illuminates the darkness, revealing the presence of a large group of people. Suddenly, he comes face to face with his family's inspection party, with soldiers and horses everywhere. The protagonist is completely stunned, a look of shock on his face as he realizes the mess he's in. His older brother Philip furiously yells, asking where he's been during their father's inspection. The young man finally remembers the important event of the day and realizes he is totally screwed. Mounted on his horse, his father calls him an insolent brat with a look of pure contempt and rage. The lord of the territory then dismounts, his armored boot landing firmly on the ground. Johan places Joseph on the ground and tries to explain, saying he had an emergency, but his father doesn't want to hear it. Jezin tells him to shut his mouth immediately, while holding a huge, detailed axe in his hand. The patriarch threatens to split his son's head open for daring to ignore him, showing all his pent-up fury. The light from the torches held by the soldiers illuminates the tense scene between father and son in the middle of the night. Philip continues to yell at his younger brother, accusing him of disrespecting their father with his absence. It finally dawns on Johan, and he realizes he completely forgot about the inspection that day. His father insults him again, calling him an immature bastard and showing his complete disdain for him. The man approaches with heavy, threatening steps, showing that the situation is very serious. The protagonist tries to justify himself again, but is cut off before he can even start speaking, as Jezin raises his axe towards him. Jezin threatens his son with his axe, and yells that he's going to crush his arrogant head for ignoring him. The protagonist mentally complains that he barely survived all that, and now he has to listen to this without even getting the pelts. But with a smile, he realizes he can spin this situation into a great opportunity. So, Johan begins to explain, saying he wasn't absent on purpose, and was out saving people in the forest. At that moment, a man from the crowd shouts Dell's name and runs toward the unconscious little girl. With tears in his eyes, he hugs his daughter and thanks God that she's okay and safe in his arms. The man continues to cry with relief at having found his daughter safe and sound after searching for so long. Johan seizes the chance and explains that the girl was surrounded by wolves and he fought to save her. The villagers are shocked, and he says he fulfilled his duty as a knight's son by protecting them. With that, the young man bows respectfully and promises to continue doing his best for the estate's safety. He even asks for the position of captain of the guard, leaving his brother Philip with an angry expression. In his thoughts, the protagonist congratulates himself on his great performance and the self-promotion he just pulled off. But Jezin sarcastically calls him future captain and asks where the wolves are, demanding proof. The young man is furious in his thoughts, as he didn't expect his father to ask for concrete evidence. Still, he tries to keep up the act and insists, with a forced smile, that he's not lying to anyone. He doubles down on the lie, saying he even encountered the legendary Great Dark Wolf, leaving some in shock. Jezen's face fills with rage, as the lie about the legendary creature was the last straw for him. With that, his father yells that his son dares to lie to his face and threatens to rip his mouth off. Johan starts to sweat and asks if his father wants a duel, offering to prove his skills right then and there. He didn't want to fight, because despite everything, Jezen was still his father. With a confident smirk, Jezen accepts the duel and says he wants to see just how skilled his son really is. He then orders the young man to raise his sword and warns that the duel will be with weapons only. Johan has a look of shock and surprise, as he didn't expect that specific condition. In his thoughts, he curses his father for never teaching him how to use a weapon before demanding this. In the middle of the arena, the lord of the territory tells his son to draw his sword to begin the duel. The protagonist then shows the broken sword he used in the fight against the wolves. Irritating his father, Jezen orders Philip to lend his sword to his brother, and the young man agrees with some hesitation. As he hands over the weapon, Philip advises Johan to beg for forgiveness, as it's the only way to get out of this alive. But the young man refuses to apologize, believing he did nothing wrong and that a man doesn't run away. He then pushes his brother aside and says he hopes to learn a lot from this duel with his father. Jezen puts on his battle helmet, preparing for the fight that's about to begin between them. The protagonist believes that showing his skills will make his father acknowledge him, thus proving his worth. With a determined look, he focuses completely on the fight that will decide his future in this family. Suddenly, his father's eyes go wide, and a look of pure astonishment takes over his face. A monstrous red aura emanates from Johan's sword, and Jezen wonders what that is. The young man then charges and attacks with his sword, which clashes violently against his father's axe. The impact is so strong that the blade of Jezen's axe begins to shatter into several pieces. The force of the blow travels down the weapon and hits the lord of the territory, who grunts in pain from the shock. The impact continues to ripple, showing the immense power of the protagonist's attack against his father. Jezen is pushed back but digs his feet into the ground to keep from flying backward. Jezen grinds his teeth in rage, barely able to contain his fury at his youngest son's audacity. Completely enraged, he raises his axe and yells, calling his own son a useless parasite. Johan is hit squarely by the violent blow and feels the impact run through his entire body with pain. His brothers watch the scene, shocked, and realize their father is serious and might finish the young man off. The patriarch then yells that he never taught his son to fight because he'd be useless anyway. He continues to insult the boy, saying that no matter how hard he tries, he'll never surpass him. Jezen seems to go mad, screaming that the estate is his and no one will ever take it from his hands. Wounded, Johan wonders what's gotten into his father and if he's lost his mind from drinking, but he soon realizes that the blood running down his face is seriously messing with his vision. Suddenly, Philip shouts his younger brother's name with a look of desperation and concern. The protagonist is surprised to hear the shout and wonders about the reason for that unexpected reaction. He then lifts his face and glares at his father with a determined look, despite being at a disadvantage. The crowd of villagers watches the scene, completely horrified, unable to do a single thing. With his last bit of strength, Johan manages to stop the axe blade using what's left of his sword. The pressure is immense, and sparks fly everywhere as the two test their strength in the middle of the arena. But the young man's sword can't take it and breaks into pieces, leaving him completely disarmed. Kneeling on the ground, the protagonist admits his defeat, with the remains of the sword beside him. Jezen then approaches and tells his son to know his place and never challenge him again. With a threatening glare, he warns that if he sees him again, he'll really crush his head for good. The lord of the territory then turns his back on his son and walks away, leaving him alone and humiliated. Alone in the arena, Johan is surrounded by the crowd, who watches him in silence with pity in their eyes. In a more secluded spot, someone comments that what Jezen did to his son was very unfair and cruel. Inside a church, a tall, blond man complains indignantly about the treatment the young man received. Father Valberg says that a knight should have honor and questions how a father can treat his son that way. Meanwhile, Johan is being treated and says with a forced smile that he's fine and at least he survived. The priest continues to complain that Jason was in full armor and probably drunk during the fight. The protagonist sighs and admits to himself that he never learned to fight with swords and is very weak. Valberd tries to comfort him, saying his father has a lot of battle experience and inherited the family's techniques. The priest mentions that a knight from the neighboring estate managed to defeat 300 servant soldiers on his own. Johan is shocked to learn that a single knight can be so strong and says that's incredible. He then reflects that fighting technique is important and that he underestimated his drunk father. Father Valberd hears the young man mention the Black Wolf, and his expression changes to one of surprise and fear. He grabs Johan by the shoulders and asks if it's true that he saw the legendary creature in the forest. The protagonist confirms it and says that Joseph and Dell also saw the monster before they passed out. The priest is shocked and starts to pray, thanking God, while the young man doesn't understand a thing. Valberd then grabs an old book from the shelf to show something important to the curious young man. He opens the book and explains that for a long time, black wolves have been considered a great taboo in the region. The book shows an image of a wolf carrying a person's body in its mouth in a macabre scene. The priests believe these creatures are an omen of ruin and destruction for those who encounter them. According to old stories, black wolves always appear, bringing sorrow and loss to the people. Johan is silent for a moment as he processes the information about the black wolves and their meaning. He doesn't really believe it, but thinks the wolf was a warning about the fight with his father, and the priest agrees. The priest smiles and tells him not to worry, as the stories about the wolves are just old legends. He believes God is helping him because he's a good person who puts others first. The protagonist gives an awkward smile and wonders if he's really a good person like Father Valberd thinks. In his thoughts, he admits that all he really cares about is making a lot of money to live well. Meanwhile, near the Eights Estate, in the barony of Brits, a scene of chaos and terror is unfolding. Amidst the fire and smoke, screams of despair echo everywhere as people beg for help. A mother hugs her child tightly and screams desperately for help in a moment of pure panic. But her plea is ignored, and something terrible is about to happen to the two helpless and frightened individuals. In a moment of cruelty, that family's life is brutally cut short without any mercy. One of the victims' hands falls lifelessly to the ground, showing the tragic end of that bloody night. Two knights are talking, and one wonders why people try to run when they're going to meet their end anyway. The other agrees with the cruelty of the situation, but shows no hint of remorse for what they've done. The mercenaries then pile up the victims' bodies, preparing to burn everything and erase the evidence. They don't care about the cruelty. They're just there to do a job and get paid in gold. In front of a large, flaming gate, a knight kneels before an imposing and mysterious figure. He informs his superior, named Karamov, that the mercenaries have finished the job and hands over the Brits family ring. The mysterious man holds the ring of the noble family that was completely annihilated on that night of terror. With a squeeze of his hand, he crushes the ring and speaks the Brits' family name with contempt in his voice. He complains that he had high expectations for Brits, but the knight didn't even last 2 attacks. Karamov then introduces himself as the Sword of the Holy Empire and the Emperor's representative. He says he is also the seal collector and will punish all corrupt nobles on His Majesty's orders. The mysterious warrior promises endless gold and honor to all who stand with the Emperor. With a gesture, he orders his men to advance and destroy everything in their path without mercy. His soldiers, with red eyes and wolf shields, smile and announce that the Eights Estate is next. Back in the protagonist's strange vision, the two warriors continue their intense and deadly battle. The mysterious knight blocks a blow with ease and glares at his opponent with a look of contempt. The warrior in black armor seems to be much stronger and more skilled than his adversary in combat. With a swift and precise movement, he manages to disarm his enemy, leaving him completely vulnerable. The opponent's sword flies through the air as the knight prepares for the final, decisive blow. In a single strike, the warrior's head is separated from his body quickly and brutally. The knight's body falls lifelessly to the ground as blood gushes everywhere in the battle arena. His helmet rolls across the ground, showing the tragic and lonely end of that bloody confrontation. From under the helmet, a lifeless face is revealed, leaving the viewer shocked by the scene. The camera zooms in and reveals that the defeated warrior was actually the protagonist of the story. Johan then wakes up suddenly with a scream of despair, sweating and panting in his bed. He sits up in bed and tries to calm down, realizing it was all just a nightmare. The young man puts a hand to his head and takes a deep breath, still shaken by the intensity of the bad dream. Ever since he saw the Black Wolf, he's been having the same nightmare for days on end, unable to rest. He remembers the priest's words about the Black Wolf being an omen of doom and misfortune. The image of the creature howling at the red moon continues to haunt his thoughts. The young man tries to push these thoughts away, remembering the priest said it was just an old legend. He also remembers that the priests call the creature the sign of Demis, which makes him even more tense. The protagonist laughs at himself, saying it's not like he did anything bad to the wolf to deserve so much bad luck. He then remembers the scene where he smashed the monster's head with a giant rock and feels a little embarrassed. With a sheepish smile, he admits to himself that maybe he provoked the creature's wrath just a little bit. The young man then decides to put these useless thoughts aside and focus on his training to get stronger. On a hill, with the sun setting, he begins his exercise routine with determination and focus. Suddenly, a voice calls him a useless brat and interrupts him during his heavy workout at the end of the day. It's his older brothers, who remind him of their father's words to keep a low profile and stay quiet. They continue to mock him, calling him cocky for still thinking he's strong, even after getting his butt kicked. The two accuse him of being all bark and no bite, saying that chopping wood won't make him any stronger. They scoff at his skills, saying that breaking a log is just a low-level party trick. With a smile on his face, Johan listens silently to the taunts about him never being able to join the guard. He then clenches his fist and focuses on the tree in front of him, preparing to show his strength. With a single punch, he shatters the tree trunk into several pieces with impressive force. His brothers' eyes bulge and their jaws drop in shock, unable to believe what they just saw. The protagonist breaks the tree in half with his blow, showing the result of his intense training. He then turns to his brothers with an evil grin and invites them to repeat what they just said. Scared, the two brothers scram, promising to tattle to their dad about everything that happened. Johan sighs and calls them pathetic idiots for not thinking about how they'll support themselves in the future. He then decides not to worry about others anymore and get back to his training to become stronger. Suddenly, a voice from behind interrupts him, saying that what his brothers said about their father was true. It's Philip, who approaches and confirms that their father has no intention of appointing him to any position. The protagonist isn't surprised and says at least he wasn't sent to the gallows, which is a relief. The older brother asks if he's not disappointed, but Johan says he'll find another way to make a living. Philip then reveals that their father is afraid of his younger brother, which is why he treats him with such contempt. Johan falls silent, and his expression turns serious upon hearing his brother's shocking revelation. Philip explains that his strength is a threat to their father, who prefers obedient and submissive sons. He continues, saying their father wants sons like him, who obey him, and that Johan is too independent. Jason believes that one day, his son's strength will take everything from him, just as he did to his own father. The young man is surprised by the story but soon laughs it off, calling the whole thing a load of nonsense. Philip then asks a servant to bring a bag and prepares to give something to his younger brother. The servant opens the bag and reveals its contents to the protagonist, who is curious to see what it is. Johan's eyes widen in surprise as he wonders what's inside the bag. The older brother explains that it's a coat and a chest plate of armor that were stored in the castle. He says he's not foolish enough to dismiss someone capable, and that he's not like their father. With a determined look, Johan listens attentively to his older brother Philip's words. Philip promises that when he becomes the lord of the estate, he will appoint him as the captain of the 8th Guard. Johan yells back that he never starts trouble in the first place, defending himself against his older brother's accusations. Philip then throws something to him and turns to leave, leaving the protagonist alone with the gift. The older brother walks away with his servant as the sun sets on the horizon in a beautiful scene. The protagonist watches the two leave, and a strange feeling suddenly comes over him. He then looks at the armor's chest plate and realizes it's the exact same one from his nightmare. With wide eyes, he wonders if wearing that armor will lead him to the same tragic end as in his dream. But for some reason, he feels he can overcome this fate and change the course of his story. Even without any proof, he trusts his instincts and decides to wear the gear he was given. He puts on the armor and cape, feeling stronger and more prepared for whatever comes next. The sun sets completely, and night arrives, bringing new challenges and adventures for the young man. In a local tavern, the villagers chat excitedly about the recent events in the village. One man tells everyone that Johan is a purer and just hero who saved Del and Joseph from the wolves. Others agree, saying he's far more noble than his father, who is a drunk and a womanizer. A man in a hood listens to the conversation and chuckles quietly while holding his mug of ale. Another villager grips his mug so tightly that it shatters as he agrees with the criticism of the Lord. Del's father then announces that drinks are on him and that everyone can drink as much as they want. He raises his mug and toasts to young Johan, the just knight who saved his daughter from danger. One of the men asks the hooded stranger who he is, as he's never seen him around before. The mysterious figure comments sarcastically that the villagers aren't afraid to speak ill of their lord in front of a stranger. The two men get nervous and are left speechless, realizing the blunder they just made with the newcomer. With a sinister smile, the hooded man says their story is interesting and asks for more details. The two villagers are completely terrified by the threatening gaze of the mysterious figure in the tavern. He demands to know more about Johan Eitz. As the night deepens in Baltroden village, with an air of tension, the protagonist walks through the village, whistling happily and dreaming of his future as a captain. He imagines that when Philip becomes the Lord, his golden path to glory will finally be open. Suddenly, he stops and looks to the side, as if he noticed something strange in the middle of the street. He spots a drunk man passed out on the ground and thinks that a future captain can't just ignore a citizen. With a smile, he approaches to help and offers to take the man home. But as he touches the man, he feels something cold on his neck, and his expression changes to one of surprise. The supposed drunk is actually an assassin who attacks him by surprise with a dagger to his neck. The protagonist is shocked and frozen by the unexpected attack in the middle of the village street. A small wooden house in the distance seems to be the only refuge in the darkness of that dangerous night. With a quick move, Johan manages to break free from the attack and back away from the mysterious assassin. He wonders if the attack was his father's doing, but dismisses the idea, as he would have come personally. He then thinks of his stepmother and Philip, but also doubts his brother would do something like this to him. The young man gets frustrated that he can't figure out who sent the assassin to finish him off. He turns to the hooded man and asks what he wants with a serious and determined expression. The protagonist offers everything he has in exchange for his life, but the assassin doesn't seem interested. The mysterious man replies coldly that he already has more than enough money for what he needs. Johan becomes desperate because if money isn't the motive, he has no idea what the assassin wants. The assassin then says he will ask young Johan a question and threatens him with his sharp dagger. He warns that if he doesn't like the answer, he won't hesitate to act. The man's dagger is stained with something dark, and he presses it against the protagonist's neck. Johan gets nervous and wonders if the man will eliminate him if he answers the question incorrectly. He remembers a job interview from his past life and prepares to give the perfect answer. The assassin then gets ready to ask the question, and the young man musters the courage to listen and respond. With a mysterious look from under his hood, the man leans in to ask his decisive question. He compliments the protagonist's physique and asks if he's really the son of that pig, Jason Eitz. Johan is completely floored by the question and doesn't know how to react to such a strange inquiry. He grinds his teeth in anger and wonders what he should say to save his life in that moment. Very nervously, he replies that sometimes a lion can be born from a line of pigs. The assassin is silent for a moment, making the protagonist even more tense about the situation. Johan wonders if he gave the wrong answer, and if his fate is already sealed because of it. Suddenly, the hooded man starts laughing loudly and creepily, leaving the young man confused. The assassin says he liked the answer, but refuses to let him go, making him desperate. With a sinister smile, he says that from this moment on, Johan 8 belongs to him, and no one else. The protagonist is in shock, unable to understand what the mysterious man means by those words. We find out the assassin's name is Kegel, the poison master of the Nisos Guild, and the greatest assassin in the Empire. He perfected his swordsmanship through countless missions, and became known as the Venomous Serpent. However, Kegel had a serious problem. He couldn't find a successor to inherit his techniques. He searched everywhere, but only found useless insects who could never truly succeed him. Some even showed potential but were too attached to honor and refused to become assassins. One knight refused to learn the techniques, saying he'd rather meet his end right there than stain his honor. Without hesitation, Kegel granted the man's wish and eliminated him without any mercy in the middle of the arena. More than 30 heirs of knightly families met the same end at the hands of the master assassin. Impatient, he visited the Empire's witch in search of a solution to his succession problem. The witch said that the disciple he was looking for was in a small, forgotten rural territory. She revealed that he was one of the sons of the drunk and womanizing lord of 8's castle. Kegel doubted his successor would be in such a miserable place where one coin could buy half the land. The witch laughed and said she would return his money if her prophecy didn't come true as promised. The assassin accepted the bet, as he knew you couldn't just take money from a witch. He decided to believe her because he had already wasted too much time and had nowhere else to look. But even upon arriving at the 8's estate, doubt about the prophecy still tormented him. He decided that if he didn't like the boy, he would eliminate him on the spot without a second thought. Back in the present, Kegel says he has no more time to waste and that Johan will be his successor. He gives the young man the choice to learn his swordsmanship or meet his end right there at his hands. The protagonist is shocked by the unexpected proposal and doesn't know how to react to the situation. In a moment of desperation and confusion, he shouts and asks how much he needs to pay to learn. Kegel gets irritated and yells back that he's not accepting money for the swordsmanship lesson. Johan's eyes start glittering with greed when he realizes he's about to get free lessons from a master. With his eyes shining, the young man says he's waited his whole life for someone like the master assassin. Kegel then warns him that his swordsmanship is that of an assassin, not an honorable knight. He warns that learning his techniques will mark him as a disgrace to his family for the rest of his life. But Johan yells that he doesn't care about honor or shame and begs the man to teach him. The assassin accepts, saying he's never met a brat like this in his entire life of searching. The protagonist then remembers something and asks his new master about an important detail. With eyes glittering for money, he asks if he'll get an allowance if he learns the lessons well. Kegel stares at the young man with a serious expression, thinking that this kid really is different from all the others. At 8's castle, the lord of the territory prepares to leave on his horse with a few guards. He announces that the inspection is over and that he'll be gone for a while, leaving his wife and eldest son. Philip says his goodbyes and states that he'll take care of the castle while his father is away on business. Johan's stepmother says that no matter how much her stepson fights, the castle will one day be hers, but Philip cuts her off, saying the next lord of the castle will be him and no one else in his family. Jezin complains that he's tired of their bickering and tells them to do whatever they want. The eldest son then reminds him that Johan still hasn't returned and asks what they should do. The lord grinds his teeth in anger, just hearing the name of the youngest son who defied him. Philip is afraid of his father's reaction, but maintains his composure and waits for a clear answer. Jezin then says not to waste time on that brat, because his life doesn't matter to him. The eldest son agrees and apologizes to his father, showing his obedience and submission. In his thoughts, Philip wonders where Johan is and what he's doing at that moment. In the forest, Kegel says he needs to check the young man's skills before starting the training. The protagonist asks to borrow a sword, explaining that he breaks his own too often in fights. The assassin thinks the boy is reckless and that he doesn't like anything about him, considering the idea of eliminating him. With the sword in hand, he asks his new disciple if he's ready for the skill test. Johan confirms with an excited smile and prepares to show his full potential to the master. The two face off in the dark forest, and the young man assumes a very strange and clumsy fighting stance. Kegel sighs and thinks that stance is terrible for a knight's son and decides to eliminate him. The boy then asks if he can fight however he wants, and his master authorizes him to use any method. With a sinister smile, Kegel says he can use fists, rocks, or blades, as it makes no difference. The protagonist then breaks the sword he borrowed with his bare hands, shocking the master. The sound of the blade breaking echoes through the forest as shards fly everywhere. Kegel's eyes widen in surprise, unable to believe the boy's absurd strength. At that moment, he realizes all his doubts about the witch's prophecy were baseless. The sword's shards reflect the moonlight as the master assassin stares at his new disciple. He realizes the young man is monstrously strong and that the witch was right about his potential. With a confident smile, Johan prepares to attack using only his fists and his raw strength. The full moon illuminates the scene as the sword shards fall slowly around the two of them. The assassin is shocked by the air pressure generated by the boy's punch and braces for impact. He knows that if he's hit by that blow, his bones and muscles will be completely crushed. And so, Kegel understands that he's not fighting a human, but a wild lion. With eyes blazing with fury, Johan charges forward with his fist, ready to attack. However, the master assassin moves with incredible speed and easily dodges the blow. Kegel uses his serpent technique, moving in a fluid and unpredictable way, confusing the protagonist. The young man is shocked by the master's movements and can't predict where he'll go. The assassin then attacks him with the flat of the blade, hitting him squarely with a precise strike. Johan falls to the ground from the impact and cries out in pain, feeling the force of his new master's attack. He gets up with difficulty as Kegel watches him from a distance with a serious, cold expression. The master comments that he hit him with the flat of the blade, and that he's surprised he didn't pass out. He praises the boy's resilience and says that if he had been born 1,000 years earlier, he would have been a legendary hero. The assassin then warns him of a critical weakness that could cost him his life in the future. With a serious look, he warns that if the young man doesn't fix this flaw, he will certainly meet his end. Johan is shocked by the revelation and wonders what his master means by that warning. Kegel explains that the protagonist can't control his strength and that it will be his undoing one day. The young man doubts the claim, saying it's not like he's attacking himself with his own strength. The master then shows a set of daggers and prepares for a new challenge for his disciple. He takes his sword and challenges the boy to attack him again with all his strength and power. With a challenging look, he promises that if the young man manages to break his sword instead of his own, the protagonist's eyes glitter with greed at the word gold, and his expression changes instantly. He accepts the challenge on the spot and runs toward the master, yelling for him to keep his promise. The young man then prepares to attack, using a tree as an improvised weapon. The clash between the two weapons is violent, and sparks fly everywhere from the force of the impact. The protagonist feels the recoil of the blow and grinds his teeth against the force his master is using. Something trickles from his eye, and he realizes the impact of the fight is taking a toll on his body. The young man remembers his fight with his father and realizes the situation is very similar to before. Kegel then says the boy lost to his own strength and that he needs to learn to control it. He warns him that if he doesn't learn to control his power, he will meet a tragic and inevitable end. The master throws a blade fragment that embeds itself in the disciple's armor as a test of skill. With a determined look, Johan understands that he needs to learn to control his strength to survive. Kegel observes him and says that when he learns to control his power, incredible things will be possible. With the sword's sheath, the master delivers a quick and precise blow to the protagonist's armor. The young man barely has time to react, and the sheath cuts through the armor as if it were a sharp blade. He is shocked to realize his master managed to cut his armor with just the sheath. The assassin explains that when you have control of your force, you can cut anything, even without a blade. With a sinister smile, he says he can hardly imagine how powerful the boy will become. The master then says that's enough talk, and it's time to begin the real training. He warns that it will be difficult, and that the young man might not even survive the learning process. With a threatening look, he asks if the disciple is ready for the challenge ahead. Johan confirms with a confident smile, saying he's more than ready for the training. At 8's castle, life goes on as usual while the protagonist begins his training journey. Another young man in a cloak walks through the village, observing the residents and the local activity. Tired and bruised, Johan continues his intense training with his new assassin master. He thinks he's learning to hold back, but he still finds it very difficult to control his strength. Suddenly, he looks to the side and sees something that catches his attention. In the middle of the castle courtyard, he spots a group of elven soldiers with armor and shields standing in front of a gate. The protagonist approaches and asks who they are, but one of the guards stops him from passing. Johan gets annoyed and questions the guard's authority to give him orders in this place. With a confident smirk, the soldier prepares to reveal his identity and that of his group. He says they are the Wolves of ActionToon, the mercenary guild directly linked to His Majesty. The protagonist gets excited to hear they're mercenaries and asks about the pay. The soldiers laugh and say they earn 2 gold coins per job, which is much more than a captain makes. They also say that what matters is skill, not the size of your muscles, to be a good mercenary. Johan's eyes glitter with greed as he thinks about the money and considers a career change. A mysterious man in golden armor observes the young man's interaction with the mercenaries from afar. The imposing figure approaches the protagonist with firm steps and an intimidating presence. Johan's eye reflects the image of the mysterious warrior, and he feels a shiver down his spine. A strange feeling comes over him, and his hand instinctively goes to the hilt of his sword. He prepares to draw the weapon, as if facing a deadly and powerful enemy. The young man is confused and wonders why he's reacting this way to the mysterious man. One of the elven knights yells at him for daring to draw his sword in front of Lord Karamov. But the mysterious figure stops him and says it's all right. Mounted on a white horse in golden armor, Karamov stares at the young man with an intimidating gaze. With his glowing red eyes, he asks who the boy is who dared to challenge him with a sword. Johan starts to sweat and gets nervous in the imposing presence of the mysterious knight. Surrounded by the soldiers, he introduces himself as Johan of House 8, trying to stay calm. The warrior in golden armor raises a hand to his helmet, preparing to reveal his true identity. He then removes his helm and shows his face to the protagonist, who stares at him with fear and curiosity. The man introduces himself as Karamov, a knight of the Holy Empire's Imperial Guard. Johan realizes his reaction was instinctive, and that he put his hand on his sword without even thinking. He's never felt anything like it, not when he saw the Black Wolf, or when his father tried to eliminate him. Karamov's killing intent is so suffocating that the young man feels completely paralyzed with fear. It's as if he's a helpless rabbit facing a relentless and very powerful predator. He feels like prey before a top hunter, and sweat drips down his face. With a cold, authoritative voice, the elven knight tells the protagonist to get out of his way immediately. The young man continues to sweat, his body trembling with fear before the warrior's overwhelming aura. A chill runs down his spine, and he is completely in shock from the man's presence. The mercenaries mock him and tell him to be more careful next time he runs into someone. One of the elven soldiers laughs and says he doesn't know if there will be a next time for the scared boy. A knight in training named Jane asks Karamov if it's okay to leave the young man there. With a smirk, he says he doesn't want to cause a scene on such a fine day. He then enters the castle with his men, leaving Johan behind, alone and confused by it all. The protagonist remains silent, thinking about the sudden arrival of a knight of the Emperor. Philip is shocked to hear of Karamev's arrival and rushes to greet him in the castle courtyard. He wonders why such an important figure would come to a forgotten place like this. Out of breath, he introduces himself as the next Lord of House Eights and asks the reason for the visit. Johan's stepmother appears with her son, John, and compliments the Emperor's knight on his good looks. With a seductive smile, she says she would have married later if she'd known he existed. She then invites him into the castle, but Karamev seems to completely ignore her presence. Philip gets annoyed by the woman's attitude and wonders if the knight is even listening to him. The warrior in golden armor then enters the castle and sits on the Lord's throne without permission. With a cold, authoritative voice, he asks where Gezin, the lord of these lands, is. Philip and his stepmother are shocked by the knight's audacity and don't know how to react. The young heir tries to reprimand him for addressing his father so disrespectfully, but the stepmother interrupts him, saying there's nothing wrong with it, as he is the greatest knight in the empire. Philip realizes the woman is trying to use the opportunity to promote her own son. Karamov then yells for everyone to shut up and get out of his sight immediately. He asks for a drink and says he'll wait for Lord Gezin inside the castle. With his sword in hand, he waits patiently for the arrival of the Lord of House Eights for a settling of scores. Meanwhile, Johan continues his intense training, honing his skills with his master. Karamov takes off his helm, revealing his confident face as he waits for the confrontation to come. The two warriors seem to be on a collision course, and their fates will cross soon. During training, Kegel yells at his disciple to focus and not get distracted. The young man grinds his teeth in pain as he tries to dodge his master's swift and precise attacks. A small cut appears on his neck, showing he couldn't dodge the blow in time. The assassin warns him that if the daggers had been poisoned, he would already be lifeless. The protagonist apologizes and says something feels off. As knights of the Emperor have arrived in the village, he finds it strange that outside knights are controlling the entrance to the castle that belongs to his family. With a serious expression, he says it makes no sense for them to close the gates and control access. Kegel asks what he can do about it, even if the situation is suspicious and strange. The master explains that Karamov is the strongest warrior on the continent and the central power of the empire. Johan is surprised and asks if the Elven Knight is stronger than his assassin master. The assassin is silent for a moment, a serious and thoughtful expression on his face. He then admits that if he had to face Karamov, he would run without a second thought. The protagonist says, "You only know the outcome of a fight after it's over," but gets a smack from his master. Kegel yells at him to know his place, saying he can barely control his own strength. He calls him a brat who doesn't even know the basics of swordsmanship and has no chance against the knight. But with a determined look, the young man says he will train and prepare for whatever comes. The master sighs and accepts his stubborn disciple's challenge, telling him to get back to training. The two then begin to train intensely, the clash of their blades echoing through the forest. Kegel attacks him repeatedly, yelling for him to keep trying without giving up on the training. The young man gives his all to keep up with his master's movements and learn his techniques. Kegel continues to pressure him with fast and precise attacks, testing his disciple's limits. With a furious expression, the master yells for the young man to keep trying without stopping to rest. The protagonist wonders why he can't hit his master, even with all his raw strength. He complains that he can't even cut the sword's sheath and feels frustrated with his lack of skill. The assassin then teaches him about the flow of force and how to concentrate it at the tip of the sword for a strike. He tells the young man not to swing the weapon blindly, but to transfer the force to the blade's tip. As time and training go on, Johan begins to understand what it means to control his strength. Kegel notices that the sound of the boy's sword is getting sharper and is surprised by his progress. The training continues intensely, and the two exchange blows in a deadly dance in the dark forest. The protagonist feels he's finally getting the hang of it and prepares for a decisive strike. With the right amount of force, he concentrates all his energy at the tip of the sword for the attack. His eyes glow with an intense blue light as he prepares to show his new power to his master. Kegel notices the change in the young man and senses the next blow will be dangerous if he doesn't defend himself. The two then charge at each other in a clash of blades and assassination techniques. With a single precise strike, Johan finally manages to cut the tip of his master's sword sheath. With an ear-to-ear grin, he celebrates the achievement and yells that he managed to cut it. He says he finally got the hang of it and that it wasn't as hard as it seemed at the beginning of the training. Kegel watches him in silence, thinking it must have been just a lucky shot from the boy. The master then calls his disciple for a new challenge, preparing to test him once more. With his sword in hand, he warns that this time he won't hold back and tells him to attack again. The protagonist uses his master's serpent technique and attacks him with an impressive blue aura. Kegel is startled by the young man's skill and dodges the blow with a backward leap at the last second. Johan celebrates his victory, jumping for joy at having bested his master once again in training. The assassin is shocked and wonders what kind of kid this is who learns so quickly. He only taught him to control his force, but the boy is already using the secret technique, Serpent's Tongue. The young man perfectly absorbed a technique he had seen only once, on the day they met, and to the master's astonishment, he uses it more perfectly than the creator of the technique himself. Kegel is silent for a moment, processing the absurd talent of his new and only disciple. His experience tells him that unless a miracle happens, he will no longer be able to defeat this boy. The master of the Empire's strongest guild sighs and mutters that his disciple is a total monster. Meanwhile, the protagonist happily celebrates, having learned the technique and secured his livelihood. Kegel then announces that his teachings are over and that he will leave the forest at dawn. The young man is surprised and asks if it's already over, as he's barely gotten the hang of using the sword. The master reluctantly admits that his disciple has already become stronger than him in less than a week. He says he is satisfied that his swordsmanship won't disappear and tells the boy to live as he wishes. The assassin says his goodbyes and tells the young man he worked hard to reach this level of power. The protagonist asks if he's really leaving, and the master confirms, saying he never stays in one place for long. Around the campfire, Kegel says it's not because he's an assassin, but because of his nature. The boy then asks if he knows anything about sinister omens, like the black wolf he encountered. He tells him about the encounter with the creature, and about the recurring nightmare, where he loses his head. The protagonist says that when the master appeared, he thought he was the omen of his demise. Kegel replies that bad luck has no fixed form, and that if he had eliminated him, that would have been the sign. Around the campfire, the assassin prepares to give some advice to his disciple before leaving. He advises him to find a weapon suitable for his strength, like one made of Danis steel. This steel is a legendary, magic-infused metal that can only be found in ancient ruins. Since its forging method was lost, weapons made from it are extremely rare and valuable. The young man asks if it's expensive, and his master says he couldn't afford it, even if he saved his whole life. Johan doesn't understand the recommendation, but the master says he just wanted to show him his pathetic situation. Kegel then advises him to run if he sees someone using a Danis steel weapon, even from a distance. The young man agrees and says he'll keep that advice in mind so as not to underestimate his opponents. The assassin then gets up and prepares to leave, leaving the protagonist alone in the forest. He gives one last piece of advice to the boy, telling him not to fight opponents he can't beat. If a fight is unavoidable, the master says to use any means necessary to win without fail. With a serious look, the young man listens to his master's words and commits them to memory. Kegel then says farewell with one last request, that his only disciple does not meet his end. The assassin's main lesson is for the boy to run, if it's dangerous, and eliminate, if he can't avoid it. With his hands clasped, Johan promises to remember his master's words and survive at all costs. Meanwhile, at Eight's castle, the night continues with an atmosphere of tension and mystery in the air. A woman asks Karamav if the drink is to his liking while he sits on the throne. The overnight complains about the taste and throws the goblet away, shattering it against the wall. Karamov says the only drink better than that is in Lord Gezen's chambers and laments the situation. Johan's stepmother invites him to a cozier room, but he completely ignores her. With a seductive smile, she insists, saying the Lord's room is very comfortable and he won't regret it. She suggests the two could have a wonderful time together, but the knight doesn't seem interested. With a cold, sharp voice, he tells the woman to disappear from his sight and leave him alone. The stepmother is shocked by the rejection and tries to justify herself, saying they don't have much time. Karamov informs her that Lord Gezen will arrive late at night, and his eyes glow with a red light. With a sinister smile, he says he was getting tired of waiting and is going to have some fun. The elven knight then reveals his true intentions and prepares for the entertainment known as slaughter. Philip hears the screams from outside the room and is terrified by what's happening in the castle. Back in the forest, Johan feels something strange in the air, and a bad feeling suddenly comes over him. With wide eyes, he wonders what that smoke and fire he sees on the distant horizon is. He then spots the village completely in flames and wonders why the place is on fire. Meanwhile, our boy's dad, Jason, returns home and wonders what in the world is going on. One of his men then says the flames look intense and that he should head back right away. Without a second thought, he spurs his horse to gallop as fast as it can. And just like that, he comes flying up to the castle gates, ready to find out what happened. However, the elven guards out front just mock him, calling the guy a slowpoke and pig lord. They tell him to hurry up because Lord Karamov's patience isn't exactly endless. As soon as the gates open, Jason's eyes go wide with pure shock and terror, because the castle courtyard is packed with bodies strewn all over the brick ground. On top of that, you can see the desperation on the faces of the victims who never stood a chance. Utterly horrified by the scene, the Lord can barely speak and asks what this is all about. Suddenly, a giant foot in golden armor stumps down hard on the ground in front of him. It was the knight Karamov, who coldly says that Jason has finally shown up, and he's late. Jason breaks into a cold sweat, speechless, as he tightly grips the handle of his axe, until he explodes with rage and yells, asking what the heck Karamov is doing there. The knight then accuses Jason of plotting an attack and treason against the emperor, and because of that, he declares that the E's family will be completely wiped out. Jason yells that this is ridiculous, and that it's all just a purge to frame him. He then challenges the knight, asking who he thinks he is to make something like that happen. Unfazed, Karamov simply ignores him and gives an order to sound the trumpet. And then he orders them to recover the family seal and purge the entire territory. With the order given, the army of elves charges forward to wipe the territory off the map. Right after, the entire village begins to catch fire in a scene of pure destruction. Amid the flames, an elven soldier approaches a kneeling Father Valberg and calls him cruel. Then the soldier questions him about the Lord's illegitimate son and threatens to end his life. But just as the soldier raises his sword to finish the priest, our boy appears out of nowhere, and with a swift move, Johan defends the priest, blocking the attack with his sword. Father Valberg is in shock, with the soldier's sword just inches from his neck, and as he looks up, he recognizes our hero, who also calls him by name. Johan then asks what's going on, and the priest says the emperor's army has gone nuts. He also adds that Lord Jason has likely already met the same tragic fate. Our protagonist is completely floored by the news that even his father might be gone. Meanwhile, the flames continue to consume the village's wooden houses. Valberg says they want to burn everything, and Johan says they need to get to the castle fast. Suddenly, our boy hears a familiar voice and stops in his tracks to look around, and walking a bit further, he finds a child on the ground, calling his name through her tears. He gets closer and asks if she's Dell, the little girl he saved from the wolves. Relieved that she's safe, Johan says it's dangerous and tells her to get out of there quickly. However, in that same instant, his eyes widen as he notices something awful behind the girl. Dell's father was hit by an arrow while protecting his daughter, and she screams for him. Our protagonist is then frozen with shock and fury at the sight of that scene. Our hero then remembers Dell's father a simple man who just wanted to protect his daughter. And now he sees the tragic result of that cowardly attack on the village. On top of that, he remembers another family that lived happily and peacefully in the village. But that peace was shattered, and they all met a tragic and violent end. He also recalls the men who were toasting in the tavern, celebrating life. But now, their bodies lie lifeless on the ground. Seeing all of this, our protagonist clenches his teeth, feeling the rage build inside him. And upon seeing Dell's small hand on her father, he makes a crucial decision. He then turns to the girl and asks her to stay with Father Valbert for safety. Right after, our hero stands up and starts walking into the middle of the chaos. The priest then yells desperately, telling him he can't go and that he needs to get out of there. But our protagonist stops walking and completely ignores the priest's warning. He then raises his head and sees something awful on a standard stuck in the ground. Because his father Jason's head is on display there for everyone to see the scene. A sign then informs them that the Duke was finished for treason against the Emperor. It also warns that anyone who touches the body without permission will face the same punishment. Our boy stands in silence, processing the loss of his father and everyone in the village. On the other side, an elven soldier spots him and asks what that illegitimate guy is doing there. Their leader then scoffs, thinking he had run away, and asks if he came back to meet his end. But without saying a word, our hero charges forward and strikes a blow. With a swift move, he attacks Karamov, but the knight parries with his own sword. The impact of the blades is so strong that sparks fly everywhere in the fight. Then, our protagonist's sword starts to crack under the knight's force, and unable to withstand the pressure, the blade shatters into several pieces. Karamov then seizes the opportunity and attacks him with a powerful blow, sending him flying. Our hero then rolls on the ground, but gets back up quickly, ready to continue the fight. He then rushes toward the enemy with a determined and furious look in his eyes. Karamov smiles sinisterly and says that the fight is quite entertaining for him. Our protagonist then grabs another sword from a fallen soldier and goes back on the attack. He uses the serpent technique he learned from his master to strike the enemy, and with a quick movement, he attacks with both swords at the same time. However, Karamov manages to block the attack with his Danis steel sword. Once again, our boy's swords can't handle the pressure and break. The knight then attacks with a series of swift and precise strikes. He uses several swords that float around him to attack our hero from all sides. With a final move, Karamov brings the swords together and launches them with all his might. The attack hits a stone statue that was behind our boy square on, and the statue is completely obliterated by the power of the knight's attack. In the end, Karamov says that the fight was very amusing for him. He then finishes by saying it was so good it doesn't even compare to a lightning strike. With a powerful blow, one of the elven soldiers is sent flying from the impact. Karamov then says that the fight is turning out to be really fun for him. With a sinister grin, he asks our hero to entertain him a little more. Then he yells out, contemptuously calling our boy a bastard of the Ease family. Despite being disarmed, our protagonist gets up with the hilt of his sword in hand. Karamov then prepares to attack again with his giant, golden sword. With a swift move, he strikes our hero's chest with a direct blow. Our boy tries to defend himself with what's left of his sword, but it's useless. The blow is so strong that he's thrown far back with no chance to defend, and so Johan falls to the ground once more, completely defeated and wounded. The two stare each other down from a distance, while our hero tries to recover from the blow. Suddenly, the knight notices something strange and looks down at his armor. He wonders if his legendary Danis armor is actually cracked. With wide eyes, he can't believe our boy managed to pull off such a feat, because for a human to break Danis steel should be completely impossible. Angrily, he then asks who the heck this bastard is who dares to challenge him. Meanwhile, our protagonist picks up two swords from the fallen soldiers on the ground. With both swords in hand, he charges to attack the knight once again. The knight can hardly believe the power he's feeling coming from the young man, and with a mighty blow, our hero unleashes a few attacks on him. Karamov then calls our hero a mindless brute who just swings his sword without thinking, and with a single blow, he easily defends himself from our boy's attack. Our protagonist uses all his strength, but the knight doesn't even budge from the impact. Johan then uses the serpent technique to take a step back and reposition himself. Karamov realizes his prediction was right, and that the kid doesn't know how to block properly. He understands that our boy is fighting on pure instinct, without any refined technique. With a serious look, he realizes the kid is dangerous and needs to end the fight quickly. He then prepares to strike the moment our hero tries another attack. Our protagonist then uses his father's banner to distract the Golden Knight. The red banner falls to the ground, and our boy seizes the chance to advance. He stomps hard on the banner, leaving the elven soldiers absolutely furious. Their leader shouts and orders all soldiers to attack and finish our hero. With his eyes glowing with rage, our protagonist readies himself for battle, and with a single slash, he cuts off the head of a soldier who screams in terror. The soldier doesn't even have time to react, and his body falls lifeless to the ground. Another soldier charges forward screaming, but our hero mercilessly cuts him in half. The elven soldier screams in pain as our boy continues his rampage of revenge. And so, our protagonist walks through the fire and destruction of the village. He then wonders why he's doing this and heading toward the castle. Meanwhile, Father Valberg hugs little Dell and says they need to get out of there. He then thinks that going to the castle now would only lead to a meaningless demise. Suddenly, he hears his name and turns to see who's calling him. To his surprise, it's his brother Philip, who's alive but severely wounded. Our boy then approaches and asks why he came back to this place. Philip tells him to run, because staying there will only lead him to meet his end. With his last ounce of strength, he removes his helmet and tries to give something to our hero. With a wounded face, our protagonist holds the helmet his brother gave him, and with one final breath, Philip passes on, leaving our boy all alone. Our protagonist then remembers his father's words about knowing his place, and he also recalls his master's advice to run when things get dangerous. He knows the Emperor's Knight is a formidable opponent, and that his master had warned him, but he remembers another important lesson he learned from his assassin master. If a fight is unavoidable, he must finish his opponent without fail. With that memory, he tells himself that now is the time to act, and with a newfound determination, our protagonist gets up, ready for battle. He then enters the castle alone, with his armor and sword in hand. The elven soldiers see him and are surprised by his sudden appearance. One of them then asks what that bastard is doing there, and where the guards are. Our hero then clenches his fist and furiously screams the knight's name, Karamov. And with a powerful punch, he makes a soldier's head explode and yells for Karamov to show himself. Our hero then stomps hard on the ground, showing that things are about to get serious. With his helmet cracked, he faces his opponent with a look full of determination. Meanwhile, Karamov's sword drips with blood, its runes glowing in the darkness. The knight then comments that he heard one of the Eads family's sons had escaped. He then recalls that it was Johann Eads, the same one who faced him in front of the castle. But our boy says he's not in the mood for a proper introduction with the guy. He then tells Karamov to just consider him a human who is very ticked off at him. The knight scoffs, saying he would have lived if he had run away, and that his life is worthless. Then, with a sinister smile, he accepts the challenge, raising his glowing sword. And so, he invites him to the final showdown, since he's so eager to meet his end. With his eyes gleaming, our hero replies that's exactly what he's thinking. The knight then charges with his sword, ready to finish our boy once and for all. The two blades clash once more in a duel of pure strength and skill. With a swift strike, Karamov knocks off our hero's helmet and promises to cut off his head. He then calls him a kid and prepares for the final blow with all his strength. But suddenly, the knight is startled by something and wonders what that is, because our protagonist is using the serpent technique with an intense blue light on his sword, and the technique manifests as a giant, blue serpent ready to strike. The blow then lands squarely on the knight's arm with devastating force. The impact is so powerful that the legendary Danis armor begins to shatter in half. With a direct hit, our hero's sword strikes the knight square in the chest. Karamov then screams in pain and shock, unable to believe what just happened. In the knight's eyes, you can see the reflection of our boy's clenched fist, and without wasting a moment, he follows up with a direct punch to the Golden Knight's helmet. The blow is so powerful that the impact reverberates throughout Karamov's entire body. On top of that, the force is so great that the knight's helmet shatters into pieces. Karamov then cries out in pure agony, feeling the pain of the young man's devastating blow. His sword then falls from his hand and gets stuck in the brick ground of the courtyard. Wounded, he hunches forward, roaring in pain while clutching the site of the blow. With wide eyes, he stares at our hero, trying to understand what happened. He then recognizes Kajal's technique and realizes the kid had been hiding his skills. Meanwhile, our protagonist approaches with an aura of pure determination and fury. Karamov then starts coughing heavily, indicating the wound was quite severe. A dark pool begins to form on the ground, showing the gravity of the situation. The knight keeps coughing non-stop, barely able to stay on his feet in the fight. Wearing his brother's helmet, our hero stares him down with a cold, serious look. With no strength left to fight, Karamov finally falls to his knees on the ground. Our boy then approaches and asks why he did all of that to his people. The defeated knight replies that it was all for the good of his majesty, the emperor. He then explains that the Holy Empire is in danger and that the emperor acted to set things right. He then talks about his sword, which is also known as the Karamov sword. Even so, he continues to cough heavily, unable to get up from the ground. Suddenly, he starts to laugh and says he's truly moved by Johannese, because he says he wandered through decades of battles, but never met someone so strong. For that reason, he invites him to join the Empire and fight by his side. He then says that His Majesty needs a talent like our boy's, and he promises that the Empire's wealth will bring him glory and lots of gold, as well as a vast and fertile fiefdom for him to rule as he pleases, and that His Majesty himself will grant him the title of knight. And so, he invites him to become the Emperor's sword alongside him. Our protagonist then remains silent, thinking about the tempting offer. He then thinks that this is the life he always dreamed of, with tons of cash. But he finds it strange, because even though it's everything he ever wanted, he feels nothing. With a look full of fury, he then simply rejects the knight's offer. Karamov is completely shocked, not understanding the reason for the young man's refusal, and he yells that the knight not only took out his brother, but all of his subjects. The knight then asks with disdain if he's talking about the commoners, and he can't believe our boy is turning down the offer just because of them. With a sinister and hateful grin, he clenches his teeth in fury, and he screams that it doesn't matter if he took out a few commoners, because they're just insects. The knight then yells that the weak exist to spill their blood for the strong. Hearing that, our boy just clenches his teeth with a serious expression on his face. He then apologizes to his master, because just this once, he's not going to hold back. And so, with all his strength, our protagonist charges forward for the final blow without hesitation. The punch lands square on the knight's helmet, which shatters from the force of the impact. With a clenched fist, our boy shows all of his determination in that decisive blow. And in the darkness, the shards of the helmet fly in every direction. The knight can't take the hit, and his hand falls lifelessly onto the brick ground. Our hero's hand is also badly injured, but victory has been secured, and so, our protagonist stands before the fallen body of the Golden Knight. Our boy then turns his face with a weary expression after everything that went down, but the knight still has the strength to speak, and calls him a fool for not accepting the offer. He then warns that now there's no turning back after what our hero has done, because our boy broke the Emperor's sword by defeating his best knight, and because of that, his life from now on will be filled with pure agony and suffering. Even so, our protagonist faces him with a serious and fearless gaze, and with his last words, the knight's finger goes limp, and he finally passes on. His body then lies lifeless on the courtyard ground, amidst the destruction and fire. To survive in this world, he had lived thinking only about money and nothing else. But now, with a red liquid dripping from his fist, we see that he has found a new purpose. He then reflects that those scoundrels wiped out everyone in his territory and burned it all down. And even if the world turns against him, our boy simply did what had to be done. So even if everyone curses him for it, he will never regret his decision, because he feels that this is his new journey and the beginning of a new path to follow. In the middle of the night, a stone gate slowly creaks open, revealing a castle courtyard. A guard then approaches a wooden door to check on what's happening inside. When he opens the door, he sees Jane and her elven soldiers standing there, and she begins to speak. With a furious look on her face, Jane asks if what the soldier said is true. The elf, all beaten up, says yes and begs her to believe him. He explains that our hero appeared out of nowhere and started thrashing all the soldiers. And then, with his own bare hands, he took out the Knight Karamov, leaving her in utter shock. The soldier then says that was the last time they saw Karamov, and Jane is left speechless. She points to the courtyard and asks where the knight's body is if the story is true. The elf maiden shouts that it's absurd and that she needs proof to believe it. The soldier replies that he doesn't understand it either, but he saw everything happen with his own 2 eyes. Just then, another soldier arrives and announces that the pursuit party is ready. Jane then pulls herself together and starts walking with firm, determined steps. She turns to her troops and gives a clear order to everyone there. She commands them to pursue the target and take him out without hesitation. The elf maiden then reveals that the target of the hunt is our protagonist, Johan. The troops begin to move out to follow their leader's orders. She calls him a traitor and the prime suspect in Karamov's downfall. Jane then screams for them to hunt him down and bring him back, one way or another. Meanwhile, our hero is running through the forest with a determined look on his face. Meanwhile, our hero is in the middle of a brawl with several elven soldiers. One of them screams in pain as he's struck by our protagonist. With a swift blow, our boy takes out another soldier without mercy. Jane then warns her troops not to face him alone. She orders them to block off all the roads to wear him down until he can't go on. The soldiers are shocked, wondering if Karamov is really gone. With a determined gaze, Jane says there's one thing they need to do. Their mission is to bring our hero's head to the Emperor. Our boy then remembers the last words of his brother, Philip. He told him to grab a warhorse and run, to survive at all costs. In the present, Johan finds the stable and feels a moment of relief. Even so, he glances back suspiciously, still tense from the chase. He drops Karamov's body on the ground and thinks about what to do next. Our hero decides to keep carrying the armor to use as a shield. With great effort, he hefts the heavy body onto his back and continues on his way. Exhausted, he opens the stable door to find his only hope. Inside, he sees his father Gezen's warhorse, an imposing animal. Our protagonist approaches the horse and thanks his brother in his thoughts. With a smile, he says that with this animal, he'll finally be able to get some rest. He then decides his new companion needs a name. The horse stares at our hero with its bright, imposing blue eyes. So, he decides to name the horse Philip in honor of his late brother. Meanwhile, an elven soldier shouts that he saw something shining over there. He's sure it's the gleam of Danis steel and tells everyone to search. Suddenly, one of the soldiers hears a noise and realizes it's the sound of horse hooves. In the next moment, our hero flies past them on top of Philip. Our boy is completely focused on escaping as fast as he possibly can. One of the elves then yells in shock, seeing that it's Johan escaping on horseback. A moment later, our protagonist and his horse vanish into the darkness of the forest. The elven leader gets angry and orders his men to shoot him down. The archers then ready their crossbows and fire in our boy's direction, but the bolts hit Karamov's armor, which he's using as a shield, and just like that, Johan manages to escape through the night under the light of the full moon. He rides all night and finally manages to shake off his pursuers. After a long time, he arrives deep in the black forest. Our hero dismounts, exhausted, and thinks that it doesn't feel right to not bury a person, but he pushes that thought aside and focuses on what he really needs to do. The young man looks at Karamov's armor and thinks it looks pretty expensive. He then picks up the knight's purple sword, which was lying on the ground. He realizes the weapon is light yet sturdy, and remembers that it's made of Danish steel. With the sword in hand, our hero notices it has some strange runes. He then realizes it's an ancient imperial script and gets very curious. A voice in his head says the sword is the crest retriever. Our boy then wonders if it retrieves family crests and thinks the name is kind of creepy. He decides to take the sword and bury the knight's armor for now. Johan thinks it's a waste, but promises that one day he'll come back for it. He then grabs a shovel and starts digging a hole in the middle of the forest. With a lot of effort, our hero manages to finish digging the grave. After a while, he finally finishes burying everything and rests for a bit. Tired, he wonders if what he did was enough to get rid of the body. Our boy remembers that news of the knight's downfall will spread, and he also remembers the knight's last words, saying his future would be nothing but suffering. But he thinks to himself that his life was already tough long before any of this happened. Our hero then reflects on what to do now that he's homeless and broke. Suddenly, a noise in the darkness catches his attention, putting him on high alert. He spins around quickly to see what it is and braces for the worst. And, just his luck, it was the same giant black wolf he had encountered before. Our protagonist is annoyed because the creature showed up right when he was completely exhausted. He knows he doesn't stand a chance of beating the monster in his current state. So, his only option is to try to get to his horse and get out of there. Suddenly, one of the elven soldiers shouts excitedly that he's found our hero's horse. They capture the animal, and the leader says that Johan must be nearby. Our protagonist recognizes the wolves of ActionToon and is shocked they arrived so quickly. One of the elves spots him in the darkness and points at him with a cry of surprise. Immediately, the entire group aims their crossbows at our boy. Johan gets irritated, knowing there's no way he can fight all of them alone. He's trapped between the giant wolf in front of him and the soldiers right behind him. Our hero realizes there's nowhere to run and falls into total despair. He wonders if this is the end for him, but then something completely unexpected happens, because the wolf ignores our boy and starts attacking the elven soldiers without mercy. The creature charges forward with fury, and one of the elves screams for help in a panic. Johan is confused, wondering why the monster didn't attack him first, but he soon realizes the wolf is clearing a path for his escape. Our hero understands that this is his only chance to get out of there alive. He knows he has to move, because if not now, he will definitely meet his end. So with a yell, our protagonist sprints, with all his might towards his horse. He pushes forward through the chaos to escape the situation. Our boy puts his foot in the stirrup and gets ready to mount his animal. With a leap, Johan gets on the horse and grips the reins tightly, and as he does, he starts to have some memories of his past. On his horse, our hero flees with a very determined look on his face. He then remembers when he was a child and a much simpler life. In the present, Johan continues his desperate escape through the dark forest. Various memories of his training and battles flash through his mind. He also recalls all the destruction he witnessed in his village. And with that, our boy leaves his burning home behind forever. Nearby, an elven soldier falls lifeless after the fight with the wolf. The giant creature then watches our protagonist's escape from a distance, and after helping him, the wolf vanishes into the dark of the night. Its red eyes seem to give our hero one last warning. Further ahead, Johan comes across a checkpoint set up by the elven soldiers. He realizes all the exits are blocked, and that he's cornered. Exhausted, our boy gets off his horse, having not eaten or slept properly. He never imagined he'd be hunted by the wolves of ActionToon for 3 days straight. Our hero almost met his end several times because of their attacks. Now he's at his limit, and no longer has the strength to hold his sword. He sees more soldiers and wonders if there's really no way out of this. Hiding, our boy is at a loss for what to do in this situation. But suddenly, he spots a merchant caravan passing by. Johan then gets the idea to disguise himself as a merchant to escape. He thinks that if he looks like one of them, he might avoid suspicion. We're introduced to Eldons of the Gitana Trading Company. One of the guards, who has an eye patch, calls out to Master Eldons. The guard says it's a knight in heavy armor. A mercenary named Can tells them to prepare for battle, but another one named Gaz doesn't understand all the fuss. Gorarn then tells him to take a better look at the situation. On top of that, he's wearing a plate helm and red gauntlets. Can then tells the kid to look at the sword at his hip. He points to the purple hilt and reveals that it's a Dana's steel sword. Even so, Gas thinks that fighting him won't accomplish anything. Can gets annoyed and tells someone to get the idiot out of his way. Another mercenary pulls him by the ear and tells him to shut his mouth. The leader, Eldens, then gives an order for Goron and Can to get ready. With a serious look, he tells them to attack on his signal. The two mercenaries then reply that they got the message. Eldens then approaches our hero with his men. Can advises them to knock him off his horse first when the fight starts. Eldens arrives and introduces himself as the leader of the trading company. Our protagonist is surprised to see a cat like Beastman. Eldens sees his men, tense and ready to fight our hero. With cold sweat dripping down, he gets really nervous about the situation. Johan thinks they're suspicious and that he needs to get them to lower their guard. He then introduces himself and says he was attacked by bandits on the road. Our boy asks the leader to tell his men not to attack him. Eldon starts to laugh and says that as a merchant, he has to be prepared. Johan then accepts the apology and gets ready to make a proposal. He asks if he can join their group, since bandits took all his money. In exchange for food and shelter, our hero will protect their caravan. Eldens thinks for a moment, and since our boy seems strong, he accepts the deal. The leader says they're heading to Marseille, and that it's going to be a long trip. Our protagonist thanks him for the help, but wonders where that place is. Eldens informs his men that Johan will be joining them for the time being, but with a serious look, he orders them to eliminate him if anything happens. The mercenaries agree to the order, though somewhat reluctantly. Our hero feels relieved and thinks that now all he needs to do is get past the checkpoint. And so, the caravan continues its journey with our boy alongside them. Nearby, an elven soldier notices that something is coming their way. They are the wolves of ActionToon, and they order the caravan to stop for an inspection. Johan then thinks that it's finally time, and he just needs to get through quietly. Eldens then introduces himself to the elf and says he's from the Datana Trading Company. The soldier is shocked because the Marseille company is so powerful that not even the emperor can mess with them. The guard changes his tone and says they're hunting a traitor and need their help. Hearing this, our hero realizes the checkpoint was set up just to catch him. One of the elves points at our boy and orders him to take off his helmet to show his face. Johan gets really nervous, but makes up a story about having a skin condition to avoid being discovered. The soldiers make fun of him and tell him to hurry up and take off the helmet so they can see his messed up face. With a suspicious look, the leader asks if our protagonist is hiding something. Our hero then realizes there's no way out, and he'll have to fight his way through. But suddenly, the leader Eldens yells, telling everyone to stop this nonsense. He asks if the guard is doubting his company, and the elf tries to explain himself. The beastman gets angry and threatens to file a complaint directly with their commander. Furthermore, he says he'll make the complaint in person at the Marseille branch. The guard gets scared and tells his men to let the caravan pass without any more trouble. The other soldiers are annoyed but clear the way for the group to continue their journey. The elf says our boy got lucky, and he breathes a sigh of relief for having escaped that one. And so, the caravan continues its journey, and Johan thinks he's finally made it out. He looks back and sees the guards watching his departure from a distance. The elven soldiers stand there, watching the caravan disappear down the road. Later that night, the group makes camp, and Eldens organizes the night watch shifts. At the camp, Eldens is reviewing some papers before turning in. He then calls Johan over and tells him to go to sleep, since he has no obligations there. Our protagonist is grateful for the kindness, as he's exhausted after everything. He then grabs his sleeping bag to finally pass out after days without rest. Our boy tosses and turns, and one of the mercenaries notices that he's finally managed to fall asleep. He then sleeps soundly by the campfire, regaining his strength. Meanwhile, hidden in the darkness, someone is watching the camp from afar. The mysterious man has a sinister smile on his face and seems to have a plan in mind. He then tells his men to get ready for what's coming. A moment later, he reveals the plan is to surround the camp and attack all at once. Meanwhile, Johan dreams of his past life as a soldier in the army. He remembers a training exercise where he used a defensive tactic against a larger enemy. Because of this, he became an example to the other soldiers for his intelligence. He was then rewarded with a 5-day leave and a commendation for his achievement. Our boy salutes and shouts with pride to his commander. He gets excited, thinking the military life suits him, since he studied tactics before. But he soon remembers the downsides, like the old-fashioned culture and the exhausting shifts. On top of that, the biggest problem of all was the salary, which was a total joke. In the dream, he's grabbed and realizes there's no escaping that place. The nightmare ends, and our hero wakes up startled and in a cold sweat back at the camp. Our hero wakes up and realizes it was all just a bad dream. He sits up and complains that his whole body is sore because of the nightmare. But suddenly, he senses that something strange is happening in the camp. The full moon lights up the sky, and a shower of arrows starts raining down out of nowhere. Confused, our boy looks up and sees the projectiles coming right at him. With a quick move, he reaches out his hand to catch one of the arrows in mid-air. His eyes widen as he realizes the danger just in the nick of time. He narrowly manages to catch the arrow just before it hits him right in the face. He then realizes it's an attack and that the soldiers have finally found him. Annoyed, our hero gets up and decides he needs to alert the mercenaries. With all his might, he screams, warning that enemies are attacking the camp. The shout wakes everyone up, putting Eldons and the other mercenaries on high alert. The story then flashes back to 5 minutes before the attack alarm sounded. The mercenary Gaz is complaining to Khan about them having to do all the heavy lifting. Khan gets annoyed with the complaint and tells the kid to shut his mouth right now. Gaz is confused and doesn't understand why his companion is telling him off. Khan then explains that you can't trust a guy you barely know with guard duty. On top of that, he warns that acting without thinking won't get you very far in this line of work. The mercenary then asks why the young man decided to join their group. Gaz gets mad and says if he'd known the group was so cowardly, he never would have joined. Khan gets angry and asks if the kid ate something bad, because it sounds like he's looking to meet his end. The mercenary then gets ready to teach the boy a lesson for his insolence. But suddenly, our hero's shout echoes through the camp, putting both of them on alert. Immediately after, a shower of arrows starts to fall, and they dive to the ground. Khan acts fast and shields Gaz from the attack, so he doesn't get hit. After the first wave, he notices the arrow shower has stopped for a moment. He then tells the kid to go provide support for the rest of the group in the battle. But Gaz panics and takes off running, screaming in fear and abandoning his post. Khan is furious at his cowardice, and Gorn approaches to see if he's okay. The young man warns him that it's an enemy attack and that arrows came out of nowhere. Khan then asks where the coward is, but is more concerned about the leader's safety. Garan says that Eldons is hiding under the carriage and tells him to get ready. That moment, our hero appears and starts giving orders to the mercenaries. He tells them to form a defensive circle around the carriage to protect themselves. Our protagonist explains that they need to fight together since they don't know where the attack is coming from. But Khan glares at him and asks if he's their boss to be giving orders like that. The mercenary then says they handle their own business and tells Johan to fend for himself. Our boy is shocked by the guy's stubbornness in the middle of an attack. Even so, Gorn orders his men to grab their shields and prepare for a fight. Johan insists and asks for a shield, since he's fought in similar situations before. But Eldon shouts that he's not getting anything, and tells our hero to handle himself in the fight. Our boy is pretty upset, realizing that no one here trusts him to fight. Suddenly, his expression changes as he senses a new threat approaching in the darkness. A moment later, a horde of bandits with some really ugly faces charges the camp. Johan then realizes they aren't the wolves of ActionToon and wonders if they're just bandits. The criminals keep charging at the group without a second thought. Khan then shouts and orders all his men to attack with full force. Our hero is shocked, wondering who's going to protect the carriage if everyone leaves. The fight breaks out, and one of the mercenaries curses the bandits for attacking at night. The bandit leader yells to press forward, since they have the advantage in numbers. Goran then screams for his men not to fall back, or else they'll meet their end. But one of the bandits grabs him by the face and tells him to shut up with a powerful blow. Seeing this, Kan screams out in desperation, calling the name of Captain Goran, who's in danger. The bandit then raises his sword to deliver the final blow to the mercenary on the ground. Seeing this, our hero rushes to save him with his purple sword in hand. With a swift movement, he unleashes a slash of purple energy toward the enemy. The bandit is confused, not understanding what that light coming at him is. The attack then hits him dead on, cutting him in half with no chance to defend. Goran is in shock as he watches the scene, getting covered in the enemy's red liquid. Our protagonist then stands with his swords in hand, realizing the power of his attack. Our boy's sword glows with red runes, leaving the bandits in shock. The bandit leader then notices that the rune on the sword is absorbing the red liquid. He yells that it's a demonic sword, not understanding how a merchant's guard has something like that. Johan then takes advantage of their fear and shouts that he is a noble of the Yeast's family. Hearing this, Kan is shocked and confused by our hero's revelation. Goran is also surprised and wonders if he was a noble this whole time. In his thoughts, he wonders if changing the name Eights to Yeasts will cause any problems. The bandits panic, knowing that messing with a noble will end very badly for them. With his sword glowing, he asks again if they will surrender or not. He then asks if they are going to surrender right now, or if they'd rather meet their end by his sword. The bandits are terrified, and he tells them to think carefully about their decision. Their leader starts to sweat, not knowing what to do in this situation. One by one, the bandits start dropping their swords on the ground. Soon, a pile of weapons forms on the campground. With their hands up, they surrender to our protagonist. Our hero then holds his sword and prepares to give his next command. He calls Goran and asks the mercenary to tie up all the prisoners. He warns that if anyone resists, the mercenary can finish them off. With the situation resolved, he asks Eldons what they should do now. Goran is worried about the noble and wonders if he'll be offended for being treated poorly, but Eldon says he'll smooth things over, since they accepted him into the caravan willingly. He then approaches our boy and thanks him for his hard work that night. The beast man then offers a reward, thinking that if he'd known, he would have given him a shield. Our hero says he doesn't need it, and that he's just happy everyone is safe. Eldons is surprised because our boy doesn't even want a reward for helping out. The two then stand there for a moment under the starlight. Our boy then asks if next time he could borrow a shield. Eldons agrees immediately and promises he'll lend him a shield without fail. Our hero says he wants to interrogate the prisoners, and the leader lets him go. Now that his status has been revealed, he says he'll speak more casually. He then kicks one of the prisoners and tells the guy to get a move on. The bandit groans in pain from the kick he just took from our boy. Our hero then asks who they are and why they attacked the caravan. The bandit reveals that they are soldiers from the exterminated Brits family. He explains that months ago, the family was betrayed and everyone was taken out. The bandit then reveals that the attackers were the feared wolves of Acton. They resisted, but when the noble executor arrived, they were defeated. Goran is surprised by the name Noble Executor and thinks he's heard it before, and he reveals that his name is Karamov, the Emperor's own hunting dog. The bandit kneels and begs for forgiveness, as he didn't know the caravan belonged to a noble. He says the army hunted them down, and that even the Northerners turned their backs on them. So he says that stealing isn't justified, but they needed to survive somehow. Our hero then asks if there was any other reason they attacked the group. The bandit replies no, and that they only wanted the Merchant Guild's charter. Hearing this, Eldons becomes furious and yells that the charter is a matter of trust. He says they caused so much trouble, and Johan tells the leader to take it easy. Our hero then remembers Karamav saying the same thing about betraying the Emperor. With a serious look, he grits his teeth and finally understands what's happening. He realizes the Emperor just needed an excuse to get rid of the nobles. He then remembers the knight and curses him for falling for the emperor's talk. Our boy realizes that in the end, they are just victims of power, just like him. Even so, he knows they are bandits, and deciding their fate won't be easy. Can then asks what to do with them, and offers to get more information out of them. But our hero says that's not necessary, as they've already told them everything they needed to. Suddenly, Jazz grabs his mace and decides to put an end to one of the prisoners. But before he can land the blow, Can stops him with his own weapon. The mercenary defends the bandit and shows he's not going to let the kid continue. Gas is shocked and asks why he's stopping him from getting his revenge. Can then says they don't have the right to punish them because they surrendered to the noble. Gaz looks embarrassed and agrees with Can that he was in the wrong. Meanwhile, the bandits kneel and beg the knight to spare their lives. They cry and tremble with fear, knowing that their end is very near. Can then turns to Johan and offers to finish them all off right there. With his hand on his sword, he waits for our hero's order to start the job. But to everyone's surprise, our boy tells them to untie and release the prisoners. The bandits are shocked and start crying with relief at his decision. Gas is outraged and asks why our protagonist is letting them live. Our hero ignores the young man and turns to the bandits with a message. He says he understands their situation, but being a bandit is never the solution. He then reveals that he also learned a trade to be able to survive. Eldens is shocked to hear a noble say he needed to learn a job. Goran also comments that he's only here for the good pay he gets. Our boy then says he will spare their lives on one condition. The bandits bow in gratitude and promise they will never forget his kindness. The group then prepares to leave, and our hero doesn't want any more trouble. But from a distance, the silhouette of a wolf watches everything from the top of a hill. The mysterious creature seems to be following the caravan's steps. It's the same giant wolf with red eyes that our boy has met before. Before heading to Marcel, the group decides to stop in a village called Lutzbach. In the village of Lutzbach, the chief is informed that Eldens of the Gitana company has arrived. The village leader then goes to meet the beastman to welcome him. Eldens greets him with an enthusiastic hug and says it's been months since they've seen each other. The chief hugs him back and asks if anything happened on the way there. The beastman explains that they ran into bandits and that things are looking bad with the emperor. The chief scolds him, warning that someone might hear him speaking ill of his majesty. Even so, Eldens says they managed to deliver everything thanks to a noble who helped them. The chief is surprised, but says that another noble also showed up there a few weeks ago. He says the guy was a fake noble and that he kicked him out of the village. Eldens laughs and says his friend hasn't changed his habit of acting without thinking of the consequences. But he assures him that the noble accompanying them is different and very brave. The chief is shocked because the guy didn't even ask for a reward for his good deed. He then thinks that having a knight in the village would be a great help against the bandits. Besides, a real knight would be strong enough to take out an entire group. The chief then invites our hero to stay in the village for a few weeks. Eldens refuses the invitation, but the chief insists, and the two start to argue. The beastman then realizes his friend is trying to steal his companion. The chief then changes the subject and asks where the noble knight is. Meanwhile, our hero is sitting under a tree, looking very tired. He's starving and about to pass out from weakness. Goran then approaches our hero to talk to him about something. He holds out his hand and offers something to our protagonist. The mercenary hands him a bag of coins and says it's the bandits' money. He explains that they sold everything the bandits had and it brought in a good amount of cash. Our hero asks if they aren't going to take any, and Gorn says it was all his doing. Our boy then thinks for a moment about what to do with all that money. But to everyone's surprise, he hands the money bag back to Goran. The mercenary doesn't understand and says the spoils are his by right. Our hero then says he took his share and shows just a few coins. He insists that it's okay, but in his mind, he's crying over the lost money. Even so, he knows that staying with the group is better than facing the wolves alone. Goran is touched and says they fought together like true companions. Our boy then shows a single coin and thinks this will make the guy like him even more. With that, he says his goodbyes and gets ready to continue on his way. Goron blushes and thinks that our hero's dignity is that of a true knight. Later, he gathers the other mercenaries to give them an important message. He says that Joan praised their efforts and that he's going to distribute the profits. Excited, he tells everyone to line up to receive their share of the money. The mercenaries are shocked, unable to believe they're actually getting something. They then look at him, confused. The mercenaries then get super excited and start cheering in celebration. They raise their fists and shout our hero's name all through the village. Meanwhile, our boy is resting at a nearby inn. He finally manages to sleep in peace with his sword and a pretty funny-looking cap. But in the middle of the night, his room door starts to creak very slowly, and a moment later, the doorknob turns and the door opens carefully. Despite the noise, our hero keeps sleeping, completely unaware. Suddenly, a pair of red eyes appears in the darkness of the room, and an assassin prepares to take our boy out with his dagger. During the night, an assassin creeps up and tries to snatch our hero's sword. But John snaps awake and grabs the man's wrist with an iron grip. The attacker is in total shock. He never expected our boy to be awake. With his eyes glowing in the dark, our main character demands an answer. He then asks if the guy is one of Karamob's goons. The assassin panics and screams for our hero to let him go. Losing his patience, Johan just yeets him, smashing him right through a cabinet. Lying on the floor all banged up, the man coughs and whimpers in fear. Our main character then walks over and steps on the attacker's leg. The man screams for help, realizing that Johan isn't your average human. The scene then rewinds 5 minutes, back at the same inn. We see the village chief snoring his head off, while 2 young men sneak up the stairs. They are Pra and Gamson, and they're plotting something against our guy. Gamson says that Vulin, the village's strongest guy, is going to take care of Johan. He also mentions that Pell, the horse fanatic, is already out there snatching the animal. Outside, Pell is completely blown away by the warhorse and tries to calm it down. Meanwhile, Pra asks Gamson if the noble's sword is really that expensive. Gamson then asks Pra if he's ever seen a sword that could slice a man clean in half. He claims he saw the weapon split an armored soldier in 2, easy as pie, and he says the knight is nothing without his sword, but a loud crash startles them. Sprawled on the floor, Vulin is terrified as he sees our guy's blue eyes glowing in the darkness. A moment later, our hero drags the man out of the room while he screams for help. Outside, Gamson is completely stunned, with no clue what's going on. Pra then grabs him by the shoulders and asks what the heck is happening. But Gamson just screams at him to run if he wants to stay alive. He can feel they've really messed up and wonders, who is this guy? Just then, the village chief shows up and asks who the 2 idiots are. Without answering, the boys bolt out of the inn and into the night. Outside, Pell is already waiting with the horses and says they finally made it. Gamson then yells at him to hurry up and get ready to flee. Pell is confused and asks his friend where Vulin is. Angry, Gamson shouts that Vulin is a goner or is about to meet his end. He then tells everyone to get on their horses so they can get away as fast as possible. Pra says he can't just leave Vulin, but Gamson rushes him, afraid the noble will follow them. Suddenly, a massive explosion rips through the inn, destroying everything. Terrified, the 3 of them look back, unable to believe what just happened. They then see Joan landing on the roof, surrounded by a terrifying red aura. With his eyes glowing, our hero glares at the boys with pure fury. The scene shifts to the outskirts of the Southern Empire, in a grim place, and a hand holds a wooden mallet, about to smash something. 2 soldiers in armor finish nailing up a wooden sign. The notice says that these people stole from a noble, and for that, their families have been punished, and the order came from the emperor himself of the Holy Cardirian Bizalfric Empire. One of the guards then asks what they stole to end up like that. He finds out the crime was stealing 1 chicken and 3 eggs from Baron Dvorob. The soldier is shocked to learn they all met such a tragic end, and it was all because of such a small and insignificant crime. Meanwhile, in a tavern at night, the full moon lights up the sky. The caravan leader, Eldens, is having a quiet dinner at a table. He's enjoying his meal and having a drink to unwind. But a man runs in and says there's a problem involving Mr. Eldens. He reveals that Gamson was caught trying to steal from our hero, Johan. Eldens is startled and spits out his drink, shouting in surprise at the news. He gets annoyed, thinking he wanted to convince Johan to travel with them to Marcel. The Beastman then takes a deep breath and tries to calm down to think of a solution. He orders them to capture Gamson, and for the rest of the group to pretend they know nothing. The messenger is impressed with his leader's calmness in a moment of crisis. Inwardly, Eldens is panicking but tries to keep his composure. He thinks he needs to find a way to handle the noble, just in case. And so, the caravan leader sits there alone, thinking about what to do next. Under the full moon, a blue flag flutters atop a wooden house. Inside, the village chief is wrapping up a meeting with other villagers. Suddenly, a man rushes in and shouts that things have gotten ugly. He tells them those troublemakers, caught trying to rob the noble. The chief becomes furious and calls the boys useless, slamming his hand on the table. The other villagers panic and ask what they should do. The chief orders them to gather gifts for the noble and to include a slave. With a serious look, he also tells them to prepare for the boy's execution. The boy's parents become desperate and say he can't do that. The chief then completely loses it and throws a chair at them, calling them idiots. He screams, asking if they've already forgotten the emperor's decree. With a determined look, he says they need to act before the noble does. The law states that anyone who covets a noble's property will have their tongue cut out, or they could be sentenced to hanging, along with their entire family. The parents are terrified because entire families have been wiped out for this before. The chief explains that it happened just for asking for 1 chicken and 3 eggs. He then yells and asks what they think the noble is going to do now. For offending a noble, he will surely want to punish everyone. One of the men suggests asking for help from Count Jarpan, the owner of this territory, but the chief just laughs and says nobles only care about their little games of honor. The village chief then slams his fist on the table and screams for the villagers to wake up. With tears in her eyes, one of the boy's mothers cries in silence. The other villagers just hang their heads without saying a word. The chief then asks if they think he feels good about doing this. He says it's for the good of the village and asks them to accept his decision. That night, the villagers gather around a large tree. The 3 young men are kneeling and tied up, crying in fear. Our hero watches everything with a serious expression, his hands bandaged. He thinks to himself that the situation has blown up way more than he expected. He thought they were assassins, but they're just kids who wanted his expensive sword. Because of this, he decides he's going to keep the weapon hidden from now on. Our guy then decides he'll scare them a little and then let them go. Sitting there with his sword, he looks exhausted from all the chaos. The village chief approaches with a nervous smile and asks if he's okay. With a sour look on his face, our main character yells that he is now okay. He then asks if this is how they welcome guests in this village. The chief immediately throws himself on the ground and apologizes desperately. He says it's all his fault for not being able to control the idiots. Our hero then says the scare was enough and tells everyone to leave. And finally, he raises a simple sword as if to teach them a lesson. With wide eyes, our hero watches the scene in disbelief. The chief then yells that he will cleanse the noble's honor with his own hands. Our guy thinks that this lunatic is just making the whole situation worse. But the chief insists that whoever tarnished the noble's honor deserves to meet their end. With a cry of rage, the chief brings the dagger down with all his might. The boy's mother screams in despair, covering her face with her hands. However, the dagger is stopped by something and digs into the ground with a heavy impact. With a furious look, our guy asks if the chief didn't hear him. It turns out our hero grabbed the chief's hand and stopped the blow. The village chief is terrified by our main character's reaction. The other villagers are also startled by the noble's actions. The crowd of villagers watches the scene in silence under the moonlight. Our guy then stands up and yells, asking if everyone there has gone crazy. He says if they want them to pay for their crimes, they should pay with money. Everyone falls silent, not understanding our hero's proposal. In his thoughts, he wonders if his love for cash was a bit too obvious. He then caws to cover it up and says he'll repeat himself. With a serious look, he asks how honor can be more valuable than life. Finally, he throws the dagger to the ground and tells them to release the boys. The chief then falls to his knees, crying and thanking him for his honorable decision. Kneeling, the villagers thank Johan for his kindness and promise to never forget. Soon after, the parents run to hug their children, crying with relief and joy. The chief also cries emotionally and apologizes in his thoughts to Eldons for ever doubting him. Meanwhile, Gamson apologizes to Johan for falling for some idiot's scheme. An old man then scolds the youths, telling them they got lucky with our hero. Just then, the mercenary K approaches Gamson, who tells him to untee him already. The boy then complains that he never should have joined this unlucky bunch. Annoyed by his audacity, K grabs Gamson's head with great force. With a cold stare, he tells the boy to relax, because it'll be easier this way. Gamson is terrified and stammers, asking what he's talking about. But in the blink of an eye, a red liquid flies everywhere. Our main character then turns around to see what happened behind him. With a serious face, he observes the scene, his blue eyes shining in the night. However, our guy is confused and doesn't quite get what just went down. Suddenly, Gamson's life is brutally taken by the mercenary K in front of everyone. His eyes widen in despair in his final moment of life. And then, the young man falls lifelessly to the ground in a terrible scene. K holds his bloody dagger after doing the dirty work. Our hero is in shock and yells, asking what the hell he's doing. With a serious look, K says he acted according to the imperial decree. He claims to have executed the one who coveted a noble's wealth. Furious, our guy shouts that he had made it very clear he didn't want any trouble. Gaz and Eldons are frightened by our main character's furious reaction. But K turns to Johan and says that even mercenaries have honor and rules. He explains that Gamson's actions tarnished the honor of the entire group. Calmly, the mercenary then begins to clean his battle sword. Our hero watches it all, still very serious about what just happened. K then offers his sword and says Johan can punish him if he thinks he was wrong. Our guy is surprised and starts to break out in a cold sweat at the mercenary's attitude. He realizes K is putting his own life on the line to defend his honor. With a trembling hand, our main character reaches for the sword K is offering. Eldons and Gaz watch the tense scene, not knowing what will happen. But our hero pushes the blade aside, refusing to take it. And finally, he apologizes, saying he didn't consider K's position. Gaz and the leader Eldons shout in shock at our hero's action. K's jaw drops too, because a noble would never apologize. Our guy then tells him to put the dagger away, and the mercenary awkwardly obeys. With the situation resolved, Johan thanks everyone there for their understanding. Later, Gaz chews K out for being so reckless with the noble. Meanwhile, Eldons looks at our hero with a sparkle in his eyes. The Beastman then realizes that this noble is completely different from the others. He thinks that Johan is brave and just, but without the arrogance of nobles. Because of this, Eldons decides he must make him an ally at all costs. And so, the caravan continues its journey as the sun sets on the horizon. Our hero then takes out a pocket watch he received as a gift. He complains that he took the item because it looked expensive, but then discovered it's broken. With a sideways glance, he seems a little regretful of his choice, and to make matters worse, he realizes he's now got another mouth to feed. As they arrive at a wooden gate, someone shouts our hero's name. The village chief then approaches with gifts as a token of gratitude. Our guy then picks up the watch and wonders how it ended up there. The chief then offers a slave, saying he knows the region well. Our main character is shocked, as he's never seen someone in such bad shape. And finally, he accepts the gift and tells them to give the boy a bath and some food. With the new boy in the group, our hero feels that having a slave is weird. Meanwhile, at the camp, the mercenaries thank Johan for the food. Our guy is sitting by the fire when the young man calls him master. With a smile, the boy thanks Johan and brings him a meal. But our hero tells him not to call him master and just use his name. The young man is embarrassed by the request, and our guy doesn't know what to think. Our main character then asks how someone so knowledgeable became a slave. Sitting by the fire, the young man says it's not a very pleasant story, but our hero insists, since he knows bad stories too, and the boy agrees. He then explains that he was a weapons and armor seller in the East. But one day, a noble ordered him to smuggle gold for him. Our guy is surprised, since that usually results in the death penalty. The young man explains that he needed money to help his sick siblings, and so he delivered the gold as the noble had instructed. However, the noble himself reported him, using a fake mustache as a disguise. Our hero then realizes the noble used him, and then threw him away. The boy reveals he didn't even get a trial, because of the imperial decree. Our main character then gets angry and asks if he managed to help his siblings. With tears in his eyes, the young man says the guards stole all the money. He then cries and apologizes, saying he just got something in his eye. Our hero watches everything with a serious and thoughtful expression. He then realizes that this world is just too sick and cruel, because if you're weak, the nobles will exploit you, and no one dares to complain, like the soldiers from the Blitz family, who became bandits to survive, or the people of Lutzbach, who were forced to sacrifice their own children, and even Goyd, who was used and discarded by the nobility without a second thought. Our guy then wonders if this is right and finds it all very pathetic, but he remembers that he's being hunted and could meet his end at any moment. With that in mind, our main character calls out to Goyd, who answers, startled. He then says that they're comrades now, and that they have to survive together. Goyd is surprised and blushes at our hero's words. Suddenly, a mercenary runs up to them and yells that a monster has appeared. Our guy sighs, tired, as it seems he won't get a minute of peace. He then gets up and runs with the soldier to see what's happening. Goyd stays behind, thinking about the promise to survive together. Our hero then joins the other mercenaries hiding in the bushes. They see a red aura and confirm that there's a monster nearby. With a serious look, our guy prepares himself for what's coming. As he stands there, someone from the back tells him to get down, but with a smile on his face, our main character says that it's okay. Our hero then orders the mercenaries to lower their weapons. With a smile, he says it's all right, and they don't need to worry. Kay and Gaz are confused by the order, but our guy repeats it, lower them. He then says he's going to check out the situation, and walks toward the forest. The mercenaries are worried, as fighting monsters requires special skills. Besides, they can't take any risks, since their mission is to protect their leader, Eldon's. Our guy then feels a familiar and chilling presence approaching. He sees a red aura and a pressure that freezes the soul coming from the darkness. It's the glowing red eyes in the dark that our hero already knows. It's the Black Wolf of Ill Omen, and he's sure it's the same one from before. He remembers that last time, the wolf helped him by attacking the soldiers. Our main character knows the creature could have attacked him at any moment, but with a smile, he realizes the wolf has no intention of hurting him. Our hero then tells the monster to stop hiding and show itself. With a snarl, the giant wolf emerges from the darkness with its red eyes. Our guy then thanks it for saving his life last time. The mercenaries are shocked and wonder if Johan is a monster tamer. The wolf then gets closer and starts sniffing our main character's face. The creature then begins to lick our hero in a very affectionate way. The mercenaries are left with their mouths wide open, not understanding a thing that's going on. Our hero then tells everyone not to be scared because the wolf isn't evil. He reveals that the creature is actually the Dawn's messenger. With an excited smile, the leader Eldon seems to recognize the name, but our guy is confused, not understanding what the Beastman is talking about. Eldon then recounts an old song from the Eastern Empire to explain. The legend speaks of a warrior who gave a name to a wolf on a night of war. The name was the Dawn's messenger, and the wolf bowed before the warrior. With blue eyes, the wolf led the warrior in battles across the continent. At the end of the war, the hero brought peace but met his end soon after. The wolf then mourned for 3 days and traveled to where heroes were needed. The legendary creature was the Dawn's messenger with bright blue eyes. Our guy then asks if the legend is correct because the wolf was known by another name. Eldon explains that the legend got twisted when it reached the Southern Empire, but the original story says the wolf punishes evil and submits to a hero. The beastman claims that this is written in the ancient texts of the Empire. Our hero is then surprised to learn that the wolf is a legendary creature. With an excited smile, Eldens asks for permission to pet the wolf, but the creature snarls and shows its teeth, scaring the caravan leader. The beastman then gets scared and says it's probably better not to touch the animal. And finally, he realizes the wolf is only gentle with our main character, Johan. Eldens then remembers an important part of the Eastern folklore. The legend says that if you name a divine beast, it becomes your familiar. He then wonders if our hero is actually a legendary hero. The leader asks if Johan has given the wolf a name yet, and he says not yet. Excited, Eldens suggests that he give the creature a name right then and there. Our guy is surprised, because something incredible could happen if the legend is real. He then thinks of a name for the wolf and suggests calling it Keta, but our hero remembers the last time he saw Karamov and gets an idea. With a determined look, he points at the wolf and names it Karamov. Eldens is shocked and yells, asking the reason for that strange name. Suddenly, a red aura surrounds the wolf, its eyes glowing. Our guy is startled by the creature's reaction to receiving its name. A blue light then appears and envelopes the wolf in a powerful transformation. A beam of light descends from the heavens and strikes the creature dead. Our hero and Eldens watch the scene, amazed by what's happening. Blue smoke fills the area, shrouding them both in darkness. Our main character is then blown away by the wolf's transformation. The creature is now the dawn's messenger, Karamov, with a blue aura. Its paws now glow with the new energy coursing through its body. And finally, it bows before our hero as his new familiar. Our hero then approaches the wolf to pet it calmly. With a smile, he says he's counting on his new friend, Karamov. He then tells Eldens that all of this is incredible, and the beastman agrees. Suddenly, the caravan leader throws himself to the ground and begins to bow. He says it's the first time he's ever seen a myth become reality before his very eyes. The beastman claims he has respected our guy from the moment they met, and for being chosen by the divine beast, he calls him the hero of hard times. Our main character is embarrassed by all the unexpected flattery. Gaz and the other mercenaries are also shocked by the revelation. Goyd is also surprised to learn that his new master is a hero. Everyone then bows before our hero and his legendary wolf, but our guy apologizes and tells Eldens he's no hero. He explains he's just a wanderer from a small family, trying to survive. Furthermore, he reveals that he's on the run for having finished off the real Karamov. Eldens is speechless, but our hero says he didn't want to disappoint him. With a determined look, the leader then makes a request to repay his kindness. He asks for permission to introduce Johan to the Marcel Merchants Guild. Our guy then asks what Marcel is, as he's never heard of the place. Eldens explains it's a free trade city and one of the few places the emperor doesn't rule. Our hero then accepts the offer, and the leader thanks him, deeply moved. With a smile on his face, our hero thinks about the opportunity in Marcel. As Eldens sings the legend, our guy gets a little worried. He thinks about this title, Caro of Hard Times, and reflects on it, but he knows he's just a wanderer trying to protect his own life. Because of this, he remembers the knight's warning about his future of pain. Even so, he clenches his fist, because his life has never been easy, because this time, by his own will, he will move forward, step by step. And with this newfound determination, they set off for the city of Marcel. With that, they finally arrive in the great city of Marcel, and our hero is amazed by the place. There, Godin suggests they need to do some shopping, since they're in a city of merchants. Suddenly, the little wolf runs off, barking down the street, and our hero asks what he's doing. Then, a vendor finds the little creature very cute and offers it a treat to eat. Seeing this, our protagonist thinks that to other people, the wolf just looks like a cute little puppy. A memory then shows what happened before they entered the big city. He was talking to the giant, bluish form of his wolf, and calls him by name. The young man explains that a monster of that size would cause trouble and asks him to wait outside. In response, the creature just growls, showing its sharp teeth in the darkness. At that moment, a powerful blue aura surrounds the giant wolf, beginning a transformation. Our hero is then completely shocked, watching the scene unfold. The transformation soon ends, revealing a very small, puppy-like version of the wolf. With that, the young man wonders if the creature got smaller, and if this is another ability of the divine beast. Godin then hugs the small animal with a smile on his face, finding it very cute. Our protagonist then agrees that at that size, the creature won't be a problem. Back in the present, the little guy is drawing everyone's attention, and Godin asks him to behave. The boy then turns to our hero and calls him over to talk about something. He says that if they buy a big bag, they could carry all their equipment, but he shows that he only has 4 silver coins for shopping and asks if they really need to spend them. The young man then takes one of the coins and gets ready to start shopping in the city. With a confident smile, he promises he'll get everything with just 1 silver coin. Our hero then laughs and tells the boy not to try so hard, wondering what he can do with so little. But 50 minutes later, a large backpack full of equipment appears on the street. The boy then celebrates the purchase, and our protagonist is shocked that he managed to get everything with 1 coin. He then explains that he first bought a utility pouch for his new master, and then he got a supply bag for himself, making it easier to carry items. The boy used his bargaining skills and sold a broken helmet for a very high price. And with the sale, he not only bought everything, but also got a throwing mace for free. After buying vinegar and oil, he even received change from the purchase of the items. A scroll then shows that they ended up with more money than when they started. Seeing this, our hero wonders how much the equipment he buried in the forest would be worth. He then decides that if he needs to go back, he'll dig it all up and sell it without a second thought. Our protagonist says the boy seems used to this and asks if he enjoyed being a merchant. With a smile, the boy says he misses his old life as a seller. He then remembers when he became a slave and lived every day in fear and despair. But now that he's met our hero, he feels like he's back to being a merchant and no longer a slave. The boy then thanks his new master and says that if he hadn't been a slave, he never would have met him. Our protagonist smiles and says he's happy to hear that and that he'll count on his help. With a big smile, the boy replies that he can leave it to him and that he won't disappoint him. And with everything settled, they finally decide it's time to explore the city of Marseille. Our hero, who has only known hardship until now, is finally experiencing happiness. He then takes the opportunity to eat some juicy meat, very different from what he was used to. With his mouth full, he remembers that the dried meat he used to eat felt like shoe leather, and this one melts in his mouth. He also remembers that before, he couldn't even take a bath, and his whole body would itch nonstop. But now in the city, he can finally take a hot bath whenever he wants. He recalls that while traveling, he could never sleep in a good place, as there was only mud and rocks. However, here in Marseille, he can sleep under a warm and soft blanket like never before. With his eyes shining, he thinks that life in Marseille is wonderful and decides he's going to live there. And so, our hero dreamed of living peacefully in that place, but fate had other plans. The next day, in the city square, things seemed normal and quiet as always. Our protagonist was enjoying the morning, eating a meat skewer. He walks with his friends, thinking that life there is very good, and that it's been a while since he could walk around peacefully. Suddenly, he stops, and with a serious expression, he realizes that something bad is happening. He then sees 2 men talking worriedly, and wonders if it's another group of bandits. The men comment that this time the bandits took a man named Dave's daughter and stole everything. Our hero continues eating his skewer while listening intently to the conversation. One of them says he's scared of the next day's news, because with bandits on the loose, no one can live in peace. The boy then comments that it seems there are bandits nearby, and that's why the city doesn't have a good atmosphere. At that moment, an orc-faced bandit shouts at a vendor, saying he'll pay later. He then approaches and yells that he's just asking for a skewer, and that he hasn't eaten in 4 days. It turns out this man is a remnant of the Acadon wolves, who lost his group while wandering to survive and ended up in Marseille. He was still trying to shout that he would pay later, but is interrupted by someone. With a shocked face, Our hero points and yells at the mercenary. The elf is then completely shocked and frozen, recognizing who is there. Furious, the soldier calls him a scoundrel and charges at him with his sword. Our protagonist then recognizes the Acadon wolves and realizes he was followed to Marcel. He knows this is not good at all, and that a fight there will cause a lot of trouble. The elf then leaps with his sword, shouting for our hero to meet his end. But with a swift movement, a blue blade cuts through the air at high speed. With a single, precise strike, our hero disarms and takes down the enemy soldier. The mercenary then falls into the middle of the crowd, who are shocked and confused. At that moment, a man on a black horse appears and comments on the city's current security. He then turns to our hero and asks if the traveler is hurt anywhere. Our protagonist replies that he's not, and thanks the man for his concern. With a smile, the horseman says that's great, and tells our hero to be careful. He then shouts for his men to advance, and the group continues on its way through the city. But suddenly, the man starts shouting with his mouth wide open in the middle of the street. He then addresses the citizens of Marcel, getting everyone's attention. The camera then focuses on the soldiers and horses standing still in the city square, and with that, a huge army is revealed, filling the square with soldiers and banners. Then, a man introduces himself as Brattle, the captain of the Oak Tree mercenaries, and asks them not to worry. He then guarantees that his 500 mercenaries will exterminate the bandits and make the city safe again. The boy gets excited, saying it's amazing to see them in person, and our hero asks if they're famous. The boy confirms they are the Oak Tree mercenaries, and that they are an elite group from the Empire. He then looks at a group of bandits and says they must have been hired to finish them all off. With a serious expression on his face, our protagonist just remains silent, observing the situation. He then remembers that if that man hadn't helped, he might have been exposed by the soldier. With that, he would have no way to stay in Marcel any longer, with the Empire hunting him everywhere. Then, he recalls the knight's last words, saying that from now on, he would only know suffering. Hearing this in his mind, our hero just grinds his teeth with an expression of anger and determination. Then, he composes himself and thinks that the only way to survive is to build a good relationship with the Katana Company. He remembers that not even the Emperor can mess recklessly with a trading company. And luckily, since Eldon thinks he's someone important, he has an opportunity to interact with them. But he worries and wonders what would happen if his identity were revealed before then. He then concludes that they absolutely would not protect him if they found out the Empire was after him. If he's exposed before forming a good relationship with the company, he will undoubtedly meet his end. With his goal clear, he clenches his fist and decides he needs to go to the company and earn their protection. With that, he decides that until he gains their trust, his identity cannot be revealed under any circumstances. At that moment, a woman with cat ears approaches and asks, "Excuse me, are you Mr. Johan?" She then introduces herself as Ibelka, a maid from the Katana Trading Company, and greets him. The lady says she heard Eldon speak well of him, and that she would like to form a bond with our hero and his house. With that, she invites him to the Katana Trading Company if he's not too busy. And so, they arrive at the imposing branch of the Katana Trading Company in the city of Marcel. Meanwhile, Godin plays with the little wolf, who bites his hand, and he asks the creature to stop. Inside the building, our hero sits on a luxurious sofa and waits in a very fancy room. He thinks that he has finally arrived at the company and that this is the place that can change his life forever. At that moment, another cat woman enters the room and greets him, saying she heard about him from Eldon's. She approaches with elegant steps and asks for permission to formally introduce herself to the nobleman. With a smile, the lady introduces herself as Ian, the manager of the Great Katana Trading Company. The cat woman specifies that she is the manager of the Marcel branch of the famous company. Our protagonist then introduces himself as Johan of House Yates and says the pleasure of meeting her is all his. She then suggests they talk for a bit over a drink, and our hero agrees with the idea. The manager serves a hot beverage that is actually a rare commodity from the Mediterranean region. With a friendly smile, the cat Woman says she hopes the drink is to his liking. Our hero then realizes that it's actually coffee and thanks her for the offered drink. She is impressed and says it's very rare for someone to identify coffee made from the finest beans. After this small talk, the manager says that now they should finally get down to important business. Then she reveals that they know the reason he came here, and our hero spits out his coffee, completely shocked. He panics and wonders if they somehow found out he's being hunted by the emperor. With her eyes closed, the branch manager begins to explain the real reason for their conversation. With a serious expression, the manager says that our hero holds a great ambition in his heart. The young man is completely confused and blushing at the cat woman's sudden accusation. She then explains that she heard from Eldons that he protected innocents and showed mercy to his enemies. With that, she says that a man like him coming to a city full of bandits can only mean he came to save it. The young man thinks he doesn't know what she's talking about, but decides to play along to see where it goes. The manager then smiles and says that ambition is not a bad thing, but rather a virtue of those who are worthy. Then, she gets closer and says that their company loves to sponsor ambitious and deserving people. With a glint in his eyes, our hero realizes that a business opportunity has finally appeared. The cat woman then leans in and offers to introduce our protagonist to the governor of Marseille. He gets all flustered and excited, thinking he can have the governor and the company on his side. With a greedy smile, he thinks that he has to accept this offer no matter what. But he composes himself and thanks her for the offer, asking her to explain what the sponsorship involves. The manager then begins to explain that the Katana Company's sponsorship involves all of their services. She says this includes restaurants, inns, and even entertainment of all kinds. However, with a raised finger, the cat woman reveals that there is one condition for all of this. She says that our hero needs to promise one thing to receive the company's sponsorship. With a serious look, she explains that he must fight for the company's banner whenever necessary. Our hero then asks if she wants him to deal with the bandits, but she says no. The manager says that the Oak Tree mercenaries will already do that, and that they want something else from him. The young man gets curious and asks what this other thing he needs to do would be. With a sinister smile, the cat woman begins to explain her proposal to our hero. She says that the number of commercial districts with a grudge against them has increased, and it's becoming a problem. Then the manager asks him to remove the members of these districts, and preferably their children as well. With a threatening look, she asks what our protagonist is going to do about the proposal. The young man then remains silent with a serious expression on his face. Thinking about how to respond, he continues to stare at the cat woman without saying a word about the absurd request she made. A while later, we see the outside of the company building with the sun setting on the horizon. Our hero then walks towards the location's door, seeming to have made a decision. Godin sees him and asks excitedly how his conversation with the company manager went, but the boy's face is in the shadows, and he doesn't answer, making the mood very tense. The boy then gets worried by the silence and calls his master's name. Suddenly, a mischievous smile appears on our protagonist's face, breaking the silence. He then yells to Godin and says they're going to get a taste of some honey. The boy is completely confused and stammers, not understanding what that expression means. The scene then goes back 1 hour in time to show what really happened in the conversation. In the past, our hero refuses the cat woman's proposal with a very serious expression. He says that in a big city like Marseille, it's normal for complaints about monopolies to appear, and even so, he questions why she wants him to harm people, and even their children. With a determined look, he states that he cannot harm innocents and rejects her proposal. The manager is shocked by his answer, and he suggests they pretend this offer never happened. The manager gets a very irritated expression after hearing his firm response, but our hero stares back at her with his blue eyes full of determination and courage. Suddenly, a smile appears on the cat woman's face, completely surprising the young man. She then says that he passed, and our protagonist is shocked, not understanding anything at all. The lady bows and explains that it was a test, and he asks if the monopoly story was a lie. She confirms that the company has never monopolized anything in that. In fact, they are well regarded in the city. The manager then says she would like to keep the terms they discussed before the test. She says that the Oak Tree mercenaries will deal with the bandits and that he can rest. With that, she extends her hand and asks if he will join their company once and for all. A smile then appears on our protagonist's face, who seems to have really liked the proposal. And with an excited shout, he says that's great and that he accepts joining the company immediately. The two then shake hands, sealing the deal that will benefit both sides of the story. Outside, the boy asks what the expression, "get a taste of honey," really means. The young man explains that it's like saying they're going to eat something expensive using the company's money. The boy then asks if the conversation went well, and he confirms that he's now being sponsored by them. With a big smile, Godin congratulates our hero on the great achievement he has accomplished. Our protagonist then looks at the sunset, thinking that everything is going very well. He thinks that the bandits are causing trouble, but that the city will be safe with the mercenaries. With that, he thinks the life he always dreamed of is not far away, and that it's time to relax and enjoy it. But suddenly, a very loud scream echoes through the street, interrupting their peaceful moment. The scene then focuses on a disgusting fly perched somewhere unknown. We then see a hand stained with a dark liquid lying on the ground, with flies around it. The camera pans up and reveals bodies lying on the ground, with people around them crying in sorrow. Our hero is then completely shocked and speechless upon seeing the horrible scene. He wonders what that is and why there are so many bodies lying out in the open. Then Gorn approaches and asks if he knows what is happening in that place. The mercenary explains that the bandits have become more violent and are attacking merchant families. He says that after the attacks, they leave the bodies there to threaten the city of Marseille. Angrily, our protagonist curses and realizes that nothing is being resolved in the city. A man then says it's the city's fault, but another claims the news is that the emperor is behind it. A third man says that's nonsense, and that there's no way the emperor would do something like that. The crowd starts to argue and wonder if His Majesty is really behind the attacks. Confusion then breaks out, and everyone starts shouting and arguing about the emperor's guilt. Our hero thinks that his peaceful Marseille is gone, and that the bandits have ruined everything. Irritated, he wonders what the mercenaries are doing, that they haven't resolved the situation yet. Meanwhile, at the company's branch, a maid enters and says she has terrible news. The manager asks about the bodies and says she already knows, and wants to hear about the Oak Tree mercenaries. The maid then says that regarding that, they haven't been able to contact the mercenaries. The cat woman is shocked and asks what she said, and what she means by couldn't contact them. The maid reveals that their leader's body was found in the forest in a horrendous state. The branch manager is silent for a moment, processing the terrible news she has just received. She thinks that the Oak Tree mercenaries are an elite force and can't believe it. Angrily, she slams the table and shouts her maid's name, who responds, startled by the reaction. The cat woman then orders her to bring the mage of the Eiffel River to find out the truth about the passings. The scene then shifts to a magical, shining waterfall, which is the famous Eiffel River. A mysterious man then puts his hand in the water and seems to be seeing something important there. The hooded figure says that Katana got it all wrong, and that looking for the mercenaries won't help. He then reveals that the man who defeated the Emperor's Hound is hiding in Marseille. The mage continues his vision and wonders about our hero, who is now in the city. The scene then returns to the trading company's branch under a cloudy and gloomy sky. An old man with a white beard and long hair arrives at the location's door with a mysterious air. The maid is then startled to see the man standing there, unannounced. She recognizes him as Lord Suetga and thanks him for answering the company's call. The old man complains that the journey was terrible, and the lady apologizes for the inconvenience. She offers to call the manager, but the mage says there's no need and stops her from going. The maid is confused and says the matter was urgent, but he doesn't seem to care. With a serious look, The old man tells her not to make him repeat himself, and the lady agrees, afraid. The mage then sits in a chair and clears his throat, preparing to talk about what he saw. He says that according to the voice of the river, he would be able to find the person he was looking for there. And then the scene shows our hero smiling with his little wolf, confirming that he is the mage's target. Our hero looks at the building and thinks that today he will finally meet the governor of Marseille. He then walks with his wolf, thinking about pleasing the governor and putting an end to his life as a fugitive. With firm steps, the young man makes his way down the stone corridor of the large building. He then wonders what the governor must be like and regrets not asking the manager about him before. Suddenly, his little wolf starts to growl, and a mysterious voice comments on the animal's name. It was the mage, who says that name doesn't suit a divine beast, leaving the young man surprised. With a serious expression, our protagonist wonders how that old man knows about his wolf. The mage then stares back at him, and our hero wonders how he knows the creature is a divine beast. With that, the young man asks who he is, and the mage replies that he doesn't seem to know him. Then the old man introduces himself as Suetka, the sage of the Ephel River, leaving the young man confused. Our hero then crouches down and doesn't understand what it means to be the sage of a river. But the mage explains that, in short, he is a mage, and our protagonist shouts in surprise at the revelation. He gets all excited and thinks that this world really has magic, just like in fantasy tales. With a clenched fist, he celebrates that he went to meet a governor, but ended up meeting a real mage. He then grabs the old man and says it's an honor, and that he's always wanted to meet a mage in his life. The mage gets all flustered and embarrassed by the young man's excited and unexpected reaction, but he soon gets serious and says that for someone being hunted by the emperor, our hero seems to be doing very well. The old man explains that with magic and the mystery of the river, he can see people's past and future. With sweat dripping, the young man asks if he is going to report him to the emperor and end his life. With a serene look, the mage just stares at him and asks why he would do such a thing. With wide eyes, our hero is surprised by the question the mage just asked. The old man then introduces himself as one who knows the secrets of the river and an observer of nature. He says he has no interest in political disputes, and that only the voice of the river truly moves him. The mage then says that if he intended to report him, he wouldn't have told him he knew the information. Our protagonist thinks that now that the mage has said it, it really makes perfect sense to him. With that, he gets all excited and asks Lord Suetka to tell him everything about the subject of magic. The mage wonders what's wrong with the boy, as a knight wouldn't act that way. A memory then shows a knight mocking a mage, calling him a cowardly student. Then he questions why this knight would be so interested in the subject of magic. Our hero asks how he uses magic, and if a normal person could do the same as him. He thinks this is his chance to learn magic and become a super powerful magic swordsman. The old man agrees and says that fate has brought them together and that he can't just not tell him, but he warns that telling him for free would be boring and proposes a game for the young man. Our protagonist asks if it's chess and suggests they could have an arm wrestling match. He then tries to start the arm wrestling match, but the maid shouts for him not to use his strength on the elderly. The old man says that in arm wrestling, he would have the advantage and tells him to follow him. As it's not chess, he comments that the game of kings is fun, but it doesn't compare to the famous game of the gods. With that, the maid shows a go board, leaving our hero quite curious about the situation. He then places 2 bowls with the game pieces on the board, getting ready to start. Our protagonist is surprised and recognizes the game instantly, wondering what will happen. Our protagonist then recognizes the game and realizes the challenge will be a match of Go. With that, he sits down across from the mage, preparing to start the board game. The old man then asks if it seems complicated and tells him not to worry, as he will go easy on him. With a confident look, the young man thinks that, once again, luck is on his side in this situation. A memory then shows that he has already won a Go tournament, which is why he is confident in his victory. He then picks up the game pieces, thinking that he doesn't know how good the mage really is, and with a determined look, He affirms with absolute certainty that he will defeat the old man in the game. The mage then says very well, and that he will start the match with a very easy move. With a smile, our hero thinks he will definitely win and is grateful for the opportunity. He then holds a game piece, thinking about making all of the mage's knowledge his own. 50 minutes later, the game of Go continues, and the two are focused on the board. Our protagonist seems to be having difficulties, while the mage remains calm and serene. With sweat dripping, the young man calls out to Lord Suetga with a desperate expression. He then asks to take back a few moves, but the mage yells that he never will, as he has already taken back 5 times. But the mage freaks out and yells that it makes no sense, and that he's losing the game of the gods to him. He then asks if it's the boy's first time playing, and says that even the Sultan managed to beat him. Our protagonist then says it's because Lord Suetga teaches very well, and he gets embarrassed. But with a determined look, our hero seems to have something more to say to the mage. The old man then proposes another match and promises a gift if our hero manages to win. With a mischievous smile, the young man asks if it could be a magical item and accepts the challenge. The mage then asks how many handicap stones he should give our hero in the match. The old man then gets all flustered and says that a 3-stone advantage will do for the game. Our protagonist holds a piece and says that in that case, they can finally begin. But the mage changes the subject and asks why a nobleman is so interested in magic. The young man explains that since the emperor wants his head, having more tools at his disposal would be better. Then, the old man says that the knowledge he can offer is not useful for that kind of thing. Our protagonist is shocked and asks if he can't use magic to fight in combat. The sage says he has heard of people who use it, and our hero gets all excited by the news. The young man then yells for the mage to listen to him first, pointing a piece in his direction. The old man explains that mages are generally called discoverers of nature's mysteries. He says that some discover the mysteries through the wind, while others end up discovering them through fire. And some even find the mysteries of nature within the dense smoke of sulfur. The mage even mentions an idiot who boasts of having discovered the mystery of the dark forest. With that, he reveals that these mysteries are called spirits, and mages borrow their powers. The spirits lend their strength without asking for anything, but sometimes their whims demand a fatal price. He warns the young man to be careful not to go against their will, and the boy understands. Our protagonist then thinks about forgetting the idea of becoming a magic swordsman for now. Suddenly, the manager and her maid arrive at the location, looking for Lord Suetga. The manager scolds the maid, and she says that the mage insisted on not telling anyone. With that, the cat woman says, "There he is," and prepares to call out to Lord Suetga. The manager then sees our hero and the mage playing and thinks he's bothering someone with the game of the gods. With wide eyes, the cat woman is completely shocked by the scenes she is witnessing. She then hears the mage begging to take back a move, and gets even more confused by the situation. The lady can't believe it and wonders if the sage is really losing at the game of the gods. With a big smile, our protagonist tells the mage to just accept his defeat already. The manager then enters and greets Lord Suetga, saying that he has finally arrived. She says he should have called her and asks if he's having fun with our hero. The mage laughs awkwardly and replies that he was just playing with the knight to pass the time. With that, he says that since the branch manager has arrived, they should end the match there. Our protagonist then holds a piece, preparing for his next move in the game. The old man clears his throat and hands 2 mysterious bottles to our hero as a gift. The young man then gets curious and asks what those bottles he just received are. The mage remembers the promise and says they are the secrets of the river, the water of wrath, and the water of blessing. The story takes us to the forward base of the Oakwood Mercenary Company. Inside, one of the mercenaries is completely terrified of something. He and his comrades scream in terror, not understanding what's happening. From the shadows of the forest, a sinister figure with glowing red eyes emerges. The creature reveals itself to be a woman with a gruesome smile and red eyes. Up close, Her face looks even more frightening and menacing in the darkness. Her dark silhouette is enveloped in a powerful and sinister red aura. The mercenaries realize they're not facing ordinary bandits, but something much worse. One of them is completely paralyzed with fear at the terrifying discovery. Under the moonlight, a scream of pain echoes as the scene takes a dark turn. Back at the Katana Company's branch in Marseille, the situation is different. Our hero then wonders what the vials of wrath and blessing are. The sage explains that since ancient times, the river has hidden the mystery of life. He tried his whole life to uncover the mystery, but the river only revealed itself with Johan's arrival. The red vial heals wounds, and the green one can make someone disappear with a single drop. With a smile, the young man gives his thanks, as he didn't expect to receive such incredible magic items. The manager then asks the sage about the prophecy and the bandits of Marseille. She then says she sent the Oakwood mercenaries, but hasn't had contact for days. The mage reveals with a serious look that the mercenary group failed 3 days ago. The branch manager is completely shocked to hear the terrible news from the sage. The river's prophecy reveals that southeast of Marseille, the will of the oak will be broken. With this, the sage confirms that the Oakwood mercenaries were defeated without a chance. The manager says this calls for a council meeting and asks Johan to act under her banner. With a serious look, our hero thinks for a moment and then agrees to the proposal. A short time later, we see a luxurious but completely empty meeting room. Then, the council members begin to arrive for the important city meeting. Among them is a man with a tightly curled mustache and a strange smile on his face. He arrives running and apologizes for being late in a very dramatic way. This is Baron Einbeck, who announces the start of the meeting in the name of the city and the emperor. The nobleman then twirls his stylish mustache, all excited for the discussion to begin. The protagonist is shocked by the mustache and thinks that the medieval era has a lot of strange people. He then turns and greets all the city council members who are there, and a man introduces himself as Belaco, the consul of Marseille, paying his respects. The young man thinks he needs to befriend the consul to live peacefully in the city. The consul thanks all of Marseille's influential families for attending the meeting. He then says that before starting, he would like to introduce a nobleman to everyone present. The man announces that the young man is from the Yates family and has received sponsorship from the Katana Company. Our hero introduces himself and says with an awkward smile that he will work hard. The council members look at him with disdain and seem to not care about his presence. With that, our young man sits down, feeling the tension and disdain from everyone in the air. Baron Einbeck, with a mocking smile, asks what happened to the mercenaries. He says that if they had asked the emperor for help from the beginning, everything would have been resolved. At this, the anti-emperor faction shouts that it's the emperor's fault and that he should lower the taxes. Then the pro-emperor faction becomes enraged and accuses the others of blasphemy against his majesty. As they argue, our hero smiles, thinking he doesn't understand politicians at all. He gets worried because many there are devoted to the emperor, and if he's exposed, he'll be in danger. Watching the fight, Consul Villico remains silent with a calm expression. But with a threatening look, he orders everyone to be quiet immediately. His command is so powerful that the entire room falls silent in an instant. Our protagonist is surprised by the authority the consul demonstrated. Then the consul's assistant stands up to present the solution to the problem. She says the leader understands everyone's concerns and has therefore devised a plan. The plan is to form a second subjugation force to attack the bandits at their source. All the council members are shocked by the idea of a new attack force. Baron Einbeck praises the consul's wisdom and says the emperor values Marseille's peace. He adds that his majesty is ready to send the army at any moment. The young man panics, imagining that if the army comes, he'll be caught and done for. In his thoughts, he begs for the consul to refuse the baron's offer. Villaco then thanks him for the help but says he must respectfully decline the proposal. He explains that he wants to lighten the burden on the emperor, who is already busy with the rebellion in the north. The consul then announces that Marseille will organize a new mercenary force, including our hero. Baron Einbeck accepts the decision and says the emperor will hear of the consul's loyalty. Our young man sighs in relief at the refusal, but he still feels a bit suspicious. He notices that the man with the mustache is pro-emperor, and that the consul seems quite friendly with him. The protagonist remembers Eldon's, said the emperor didn't touch Marcel, and gets annoyed. With that, the meeting ends, and all the council members are invited to a tea party. The mustached nobleman then leaves the room, with a thoughtful expression on his face. At that moment, Villico approaches and asks our hero for a moment of his time. The consul smiles in a friendly way, and the young man agrees to talk with him for a bit. In his thoughts, the young man decides that if Villico is pro-emperor, he will flee on the spot. He then begins to lament his fate, wondering if he'll have to wander again. The leader invites him to his office, and the young man follows him along with Baron Einbach. Inside the room, the nobleman asks Johann to sit comfortably for the conversation. Our hero says his thanks, while staring at the luxurious door of the man's office. The leader then turns and asks which family the young knight is truly from. With a nervous smile, the protagonist says he is Johann Yates of the Yates family. He breaks into a cold sweat and looks worried after telling the lie. To his surprise, Villico bursts with joy, saying he knows the Yates family. The consul says the family is famous for its liquor, and our hero is shocked by this discovery. Villico then grabs a bottle of the drink, saying it's a nostalgic taste from the young man's family. With that, Villico grabs 2 glasses and places them on the table, preparing to serve the drink. He then offers a glass to the young man, saying the drink should remind him of home. Our hero thanks him a bit awkwardly, as the consul fills his glass with the liquor. The young man then downs the glass in one go, while Villico watches him attentively. He says the drink brings back good memories of home, even without knowing it existed. The leader laughs, satisfied with the answer, and our protagonist feels awkward at the reaction. Then Villico changes the subject and asks if the Yates family has been having any trouble. He comments that he heard about the emperor's cold wind that swept through the north in a tragedy. The memory of the terrible event in his homeland comes to our hero's mind, and he becomes serious. The consul continues, saying that many families were driven out and became bandits. He also mentions that someone is wanted for treason, and our young man tenses up. The leader reveals that the name of this family is Eats, our hero's family. The young man tries to play it off, saying it's the first time he's heard of it, but he just stares at him for a moment. Then, the leader laughs and apologizes for the long talk, leaving our hero even more confused. Our protagonist gives a nervous laugh, not knowing how to react to the tense situation. Villico then stands up and, with a mysterious air, asks if the young man knew something. He reveals that the drink wasn't from the Yates family, but rather a cheap whiskey from the region. Our hero's eyes widen in shock as he realizes he's been caught in the lie. With that, Villico ends the charade and calls him by his real name, Johann Eats. The young man is completely paralyzed, with sweat running down his face after being discovered. But the consul turns his back and calmly says he won't turn the young man over to the emperor. Then, he gives a dark look and says he might change his mind in the future. Our hero wonders what he means by such a direct threat. At that moment, the leader states that his decisions are made solely for the good of the city of Marcel. With that, the man explains that it doesn't matter which faction is in power, as long as peace continues. He continues, saying he will use the balance between the groups to protect all the people. Then the superior tells the boy to take care of all the bandits to prove he is useful. But the final warning is clear, because if he fails, he'll be sent straight to face the emperor's justice. Desperate, the protagonist slumps against a wall, feeling the weight of all this danger. He thinks that he just wanted a peaceful life, but now he has a chain tightening around his neck. With that, the young man begins to remember all the suffering he went through and the old fights. But soon, the hero regains his composure and decides he will win the leader's approval the hard way. Suddenly, a little girl runs up to him, shouting that the attack force has already arrived in the city. The young man looks to the horizon and wonders if that is the army the man has assembled. Before them, we see the second attack force against the bandits marching down the road. In this group are the Red Iron mercenaries, who are known for being very rough. Additionally, the monastery of Saint Ina and Saint Galanto have also sent their warriors. Surprised, the boy asks if they are famous, and the girl confirms that they are local legends. She then explains that the Knights of Saint Galanto are masters in the art of alchemy and combat. She continues to explain that the monastery of Saint Ina is an order of holy female knights. As for the Red Iron mercenaries, they are dwarves specializing in sieges who value honor and loyalty. Then, she points to Count Bartok's knights, who are elves from Erang's famous for their courage. The young man comments that elves are usually rude, and the girl apologizes for his comment. On top of the wall, our hero prepares to meet the people who will fight by his side. At that moment, the company's banner is raised, marking the start of the meeting between the groups. With an excited shout, Captain Kumul of the Red Iron Mercenaries calls for Lady Ayn. The branch manager appears and introduces our hero as the knight who will fight with them. The dwarf tells the young man to relax, but he replies that he needs to maintain his dignity in front of the troops. With a thumbs up, the captain says he spoke well, and that no one there doubts his authority. The protagonist smiles and thanks the leader of the dwarf warriors for his understanding. He then turns and asks the holy knights how they plan to move. The commander replies with a smile that they will move together with Captain Kumul's forces. With that, we meet Valian from the monastery of Saint Ina and Aganta from the monastery of Saint Galanto. The dwarf captain beats his chest and says he's grateful for the cooperation of everyone present. Our hero thinks the dwarf is very smart and that he likes the organized way he does things. The branch manager then asks why the young man is gathering so many troops for the mission. Suddenly, the sound of horse hooves approaches, interrupting the group's conversation. An elven knight named Bartok Gustav complains, saying that they alone would have been enough. His companions Laurent and Leon agree, but say their master must have a good reason. The elven knight observes the situation with an expression of total contempt on his face. He then rides up to our hero and asks if he is the knight from the trading company. The young man confirms and introduces himself as Johann of the Yates family with a very serious look. With a disgusted look, the elf repeats the name and says he's never heard of that family. Then he points at the young man and warns that he won't save him if he gets into trouble. Our protagonist just responds coldly that he will remember the warning during the battle. The elf also yells at the dwarf captain that he won't take orders from him in the fight. Next, the Knight Gustav orders the manager to prepare a grand banquet in his name. With that, the group of elven knights rides ahead, leaving everyone else behind on the road. Our hero understands why the dwarf asked for command authority to deal with them, but he believes that even with the annoying elves, they will easily handle the bandits. At that moment, the branch manager is called over by one of her assistants to talk. The young woman then whispers something in her superior's ear, who listens very attentively. Soon after, the manager informs our hero that someone wishes to meet him during the night. Surprised, the young man points to himself and wonders if Consul Villico wants to see him again. The cat woman gets a bit awkward with the question and doesn't know what to answer him. Night falls, and the troops gather in a field for a banquet before their departure. The elves toast to the defeat of their enemies, completely drunk and ready to party. They shout that their swords will be victorious, while an older elf complains about the shouting. Meanwhile, our hero walks alone, thinking that refusing a drink could be an insult. He continues to think that refusing a drink is a sign that he doesn't trust his allies. Then the young man knocks on a room door, and a mysterious voice invites him to enter. With a creak, the door opens, revealing a dark and very luxurious room inside. Inside, he asks who wanted to see him, and the hooded figure tells him to sit down. With that, the young man wonders if the nobles of this world drink every single day without stopping. At least, he thinks this drink isn't the cheap one Villico used to test him before. The figure then serves a drink and asks if the nobleman is going to fight just for money. Our hero gives a nervous laugh and asks who the man is to be so rude. At that moment, the mysterious man begins to remove his hood to reveal his identity. To his surprise, it's Baron Einbeck, who introduces himself as a loyal citizen of the Empire. Our protagonist's eyes widen as he didn't expect to find the nobleman there. The man with the mustache explains that Marcel claims to be neutral but acts as if it's against the emperor. He then asks if the young man understands the reason for the meeting, and the young man says no. With that, the nobleman just stares at him with a serious look while twirling his stylish mustache. The boy says he's not good with politics, and that getting involved with people from the empire is not a good idea. The Baron laughs and says he'll give him some advice, as merchants need two things. While pouring the drink, he reveals that these two things are profit and absolute power. With a smile, he says that if the company supports him, then the young man is their power. The protagonist asks why he thinks that, and reminds him that his name is Johann of the Yates family. But the nobleman reveals that he investigated his past and found no record of his family. The young man is in shock, because even this man has discovered his deepest secret. The nobleman reveals that there was a family named Yates with a name very similar to his. He says they were wiped out for treason, and that no one was spared in the terrible event. But the nobleman says his name doesn't matter, because Marcel accepted him for his strength. With that, our hero gets straight to the point and asks what the man wants with him. The Baron then asks the young man not to join the subjugation, but rather the emperor's army. The proposal is a chance to join the empire's inner circle and gain great power. With this, he could become a true holy knight and receive many honors. In addition, the young man would gain vast, fertile lands to rule as he wished in the future. The young man then summarizes the proposal, and the nobleman agrees with a very excited smile on his face. The man says it's the law of nature, as the strong always reap what the weak sow. With a strange look, he says it's normal for the weak to fall at the hands of bandits. At this, the Baron starts to laugh like a maniac, saying it's the fault of those who lose in life. But with a smile on his face, our protagonist simply refuses the nobleman's offer. The man with the mustache is completely shocked and speechless at the young man's response. Then the young man begins to tell a story about how, months ago, a dark night appeared in his lands. He says the man who served the emperor wiped out his family and his innocent people. The Shadow Knight then made him the same offer to become the emperor's sword. Our hero says he refused, but that there is a big difference between the two cases. The difference is that the emperor's knight ended up being defeated by his own hands. The Baron is completely terrified, his eyes wide with pure fear and surprise. Our hero coldly reveals that he struck down the emperor's personal knight. Without hesitation, he also scattered the man's henchmen as if they were just bugs on the ground. At this, the nobleman shouts in panic, as the young man had defeated the famous knight Karamat. The young man then confirms that he is the survivor of the wiped-out Yates family. With his hand on the cup, the protagonist prepares to teach the man with the mustache a lesson. He then drinks the liquid while the nobleman calls him a fool for his defiant attitude. But with incredible strength, the young man crushes the metal cup in his hand with no effort at all. Then he shatters the cup and the table with a single blow, leaving everything in pieces on the floor. The nobleman is shocked to see that the boy destroyed everything with his bare hands. The hero warns that he will take care of the bandits for his own reasons, and not for the empire. With that, he returns the favor and advises the man not to tell anyone what he saw there. And to make the message clear, he destroys the doorknob with his absurd strength. The nobleman gets furious and curses at the young man, saying that next time, he won't just break the table. The protagonist then leaves the room, leaving the man with the mustache behind alone. But suddenly, the boy stops walking and wonders what's happening to him. Then, his chest begins to burn, and he feels a terrible shortness of breath that suffocates him. An agonizing pain hits him, and blood begins to drip from his nose. With wide eyes, he finally understands what the Baron did to him in that room. The drink the nobleman offered him wasn't an ordinary wine, but a deadly poison. Fallen on the floor, our hero curses the Baron with his last bit of strength, feeling the poison take effect. He can't believe he was defeated this way, while the nobleman stares at him with a victorious look. The man with the mustache then shows a look of pure malice, with the young man fallen before him. With a gruesome smile, the nobleman celebrates his victory over the young warrior without mercy. At the gathering spot near Marcel, night falls and everyone gathers around the campfires to enjoy the feast. Just then, we see some ladies surrounding the young Godin, complimenting him and teasing him about his cute appearance. Then, they start pinching the little guy while saying things that leave him completely embarrassed and flustered. So, the boy can't take it anymore and runs off in a panic, his face all red with embarrassment. At this, the women laugh at his reaction and comment that they just wanted to make the boy look more neat and elegant. But the assistant keeps running through the dark corridors of the building, shouting his master's name for help. He starts to cry out of fear, saying the place is too scary and that he needs to find his master right away. Suddenly, the little one stops, walking when he sees a hand lying on the floor and wonders what could have happened in that place. Looking closer, the boy is in absolute shock when he realizes the warrior is in awful shape. In that instant, a dark, reddish energy seems to take over the room, representing the terrible effect of the poison. The young man looks at the fallen protagonist and falls into total despair, calling out his name with all his might. He notices the hero is expelling a lot of dark liquid from his mouth and fears that his end is near. The dark-haired man then starts to get really sick and uses a bucket to try and get everything bad out. With that, the assistant shouts his master's name again while trying to understand how he got so sick all of a sudden. Desperate, the little one cries out for help, saying his protector seems to be losing his strength and isn't going to make it. At this, he begs his friend to hang on and stay conscious while observing the young man's pale and lifeless face. But the protagonist manages to keep his eyes open with difficulty, even though he is completely sweaty and looks terrible. Then, the boy remembers the potion the sage gave him and starts giving the miraculous liquid to the injured man to drink quickly. After taking the remedy, the hero begins to feel better and thanks his faithful companion for saving his life. At that moment, he also shows his gratitude to the mage, because without that blessed water, he certainly would have been a goner. The mage then scolds the young man, saying he was very foolish for going after the Baron, even though he knew he was a traitor. At this, he tells the young man to be more careful, because next time he might not be so lucky and could end up losing his life. With that, the old man asks if the hero managed to capture the noble, as he would be the proof of the whole conspiracy that took place. But the protagonist says that when he arrived at the location, the man with the mustache had already fled and was no longer there to be caught. A flashback then shows the warrior furiously shouting the noble's name and telling him to show up and settle the score. At that moment, he charges at the Baron's guards and says he won't go easy on anyone who gets in his way. One of the soldiers then informs him that the man has already escaped, and the young man reflects on how nobles always get away with things. The dark-haired man then gets confused when he notices something on the floor and wonders what that could be in front of him. At this, he sees a sealed letter on the ground and realizes the noble must have dropped it during his desperate escape. Back in the present, the young man shows the envelope to the mage and says he found something very important in the Baron's room. He explains that they are documents the man couldn't take with him and that everything about the incident is written there. The sage then asks what's in the letter and if it proves that the emperor hired the bandits to attack the city. But the protagonist denies it and says the truth is much more serious and terrible than they could ever imagine. At that moment, we see a castle gate opening and a hooded figure leaving at high speed during the night. The man with the mustache then rides through the dark forest with a determined look and an evil plan in his mind. With a sinister smile, he thinks that by now the young warrior must already be lifeless because of the poison. He then feels victorious and says that everything is going exactly as the emperor planned from the beginning. The noble then arrives at a camp, and the guards shout to clear the way because Lord Ainbeck has finally arrived. Another man then greets him with a smile, and the Baron just nods, confirming his arrival at the location. We then see someone's foot stepping on a wooden platform, indicating that the noble has dismounted from his horse. The Baron then presents himself before a huge army of mercenaries gathered in a camp. With a furious shout, he declares to everyone that they are not simple bandits as everyone thinks. He reveals that they are actually mercenaries of the Empire, the strongest and most feared warriors of all. With that, the Empire's banner is shown, and the man says that they swear loyalty to their majestic emperor. The noble then shouts that for a long time, he has undermined the city of Marseille, and that he knows all of their plans. With an evil look, he claims that the enemies will fall into chaos without even knowing who truly attacked them. At this, a vision of chaos and destruction shows soldiers screaming in despair during the great battle. The man with the mustache then smiles with an air of superiority and total confidence in his foolproof plan. He then reveals that, on top of everything, the emperor himself sent a mage from the imperial court to help. The mercenaries are shocked and wonder if it could be the famous Kegel of the Crimson Flame. At that moment, a dark and mysterious figure emerges from the shadows, shrouded in a sinister purple aura. The figure then says it's absurd to be mistaken for a common mage, as she is the emperor's favorite. With a wicked smile, the woman reveals herself, showing her red hair and serpent-like features. She then introduces herself as Janina, the imperial court mage, leaving everyone surprised by her identity. One of the mercenaries is confused, as he has never heard of a woman mage with that name before. The lady says of course he hasn't, and that she is not a mage who uses simple elements like the others. With a sinister look, she reveals that she actually deals with living weapons, to everyone's astonishment. At this, she opens a vial, and a bright green liquid starts to pour out of it with a strange energy. The sorceress then confirms with a wicked smile, as she holds the potion that glows brightly in the night. The scene then shows the leads of some soldiers on the ground, preparing for what's to come. The potion then begins to take effect, and a dark creature appears before the soldiers. With that, the mercenaries become completely terrified, not understanding what is happening. Then, the serpent woman reveals her living weapon, which is actually a giant, monstrous troll. With a sinister smile, the mage says that her lovely monster will fight alongside them in the battle. At that moment, the Baron shouts that the next day will be the day they crush Marseille's forces. He then raises his fist in fury and says that they will offer up the city of Marseille. With an expression of pure evil, he completes the sentence, saying the offering will be for the emperor. At this, the mercenaries begin to shout and celebrate the glory of their sacred empire. Everyone then raises their swords and continues to cheer the name of the emperor and his great empire. Back in the room, the protagonist remains silent with a serious and thoughtful look on his face. He then calls his assistant, Godin, who promptly answers his master's call. The hero hands him the letter and asks the boy to take it to the consul without telling anyone. With that, the young man takes the envelope, understanding the importance and secrecy of the mission he has received. The young man then calls the mercenaries Goran and Kan for a private and important conversation. Elsewhere, the river questions the mage about why he is helping that night. The guild manager is then shocked and asks what the river's wish is in all of this. She wonders what the river intends to do through the young warrior who is in the city. On the day of departure, in front of Marseille's gate, the dwarf captain awaits the start of the mission. With that, the second subjugation force prepares to leave and face the bandits. A holy knight then says a prayer, asking for his lord's blessing for the battle. Mounted on his horse, our hero rides forward with the troops to begin the subjugation mission. At that moment, one of his companions calls his name, and he looks back to see who it is. The little assistant then wishes him good luck, and the warrior asks him to take good care of the mage in his absence. With that, the sage says it's not his first time on an operation, and tells the young man to take care of himself. The protagonist then says his goodbyes and rides towards the army, leaving his friends behind. He then joins the rest of the troops and passes by one of the dwarf soldiers, who is watching him. The dwarf captain greets him, and the young man confirms he's ready for whatever comes. At this, the dwarf leader gives a hand signal, preparing to give the attack order to everyone. With a powerful shout, he gets the attention of all the troops gathered there on the field. He then orders everyone to advance and begin marching towards the enemy camp. but the elf knights ignore the order and charge ahead, shouting and thinking they're the best. We then see that they are moving away from the rest of the army, acting on their own, without any strategy. Our hero gets annoyed and understands why the dwarf asked for command authority to deal with them. The captain then repeats the order to advance, so that everyone follows the plan as previously agreed. Elsewhere, the consul watches the city from his window while his assistant accompanies him. The cat woman then informs him that the subjugation force has finally departed on its mission. With a serious look, the magistrate of the city of Marcel, named Villaco, continues to observe the horizon. He then holds the letter our hero sent and asks if it has been verified by anyone yet. The assistant confirms and says the letter was found in the Baron's room, leaving the leader intrigued. He then finds it very suspicious that the letter appeared just on the eve of the departure and in the noble's room. Consul Villaco, on the balcony, still doesn't believe the letter is genuine, especially with the rivalries between the noble houses. But his cat-woman assistant confirms that the seal is undoubtedly from House Einbeck, and the leader then understands the situation. With this, he thinks that looking at the seal and the contents of the envelope, it seems the Baron is really behind everything. The magistrate then holds the letter and concludes that the evidence points to the guilt of the man with the mustache. The assistant informs him that they tried to pressure the noble, but he had already fled, and asks if that isn't enough to be suspicious. However, the leader says he still doesn't trust the young knight, and that he is concerned about the trading company's faith in him. The cat-woman then defends her guild and states that they only trust those who truly deserve their support. With a smile, the elf says he understands her position, but warns her to remember something important. He warns that if the warriors' misguided actions break the city's balance, things will get ugly. At this, the assistant breaks into a sweat, and the warning ends with the company not being able to escape responsibility. The young woman then suspects that Magistrate Villaco might be from the pro-Emperor faction because of his attitude. Meanwhile, at the pro-Emperor faction's camp, someone asks Baron Einbeck if a piece of news is true. With a sinister smile, a man confirms the information and says he just received the message from a messenger. The mustached noble then celebrates that Marcel's second force has fallen into the trap, and that the city already belongs to the Emperor. The faction leader then laughs and says that now all that's left is to wait for the news of the coming victory. A mercenary dreams about what he'll do after the victory, and Baron Einbeck calls him disgusting for only thinking about that. At that moment, the mage Janina, sitting at the table, asks the noble why he seems so pale and worried. He then tries to hide his nervousness and says there's no reason to worry about anything there. But the sweat on his face gives away that he is very distressed about something tormenting him inside. The sorceress stares at him seriously and asks if he has heard any news about the knight, Karamov. The mustached noble then asks if she heard anything about the knight being seriously injured in the expedition. The mage and the other man are confused by the question and don't understand the reason for his concern. With that, the two of them start laughing and say that the idea of the knight getting hurt is a ridiculous joke. The sorceress then explains that he is the strongest swordsman in the Empire and an unparalleled warrior. She continues, saying he is covered in legendary gear and is the core of their military power. The serpent woman concludes that it's impossible for anything to happen to a man like him, and the Baron nervously agrees. In his thoughts, the noble gets angry, realizing he was deceived, and gloats about having gotten rid of the young man. Far away, our hero rides calmly and stops when he notices something strange on the path ahead. He then comments that the elf Gustav's unit seems to have cleared the area efficiently. The scene shows several bodies on the ground, confirming that the elves did indeed pass through there and won the battle. The elf knight then arrives and scoffs at the dwarves, saying they are slow as expected of their kind. The dwarf captain gets angry and points at the elf, saying that he is a dwarf, not an elf like he said. With a smile, he remembers that our hero is a noble and that the elf should show more respect. The dwarf then becomes enraged and threatens to crush the elf's pointy ears, who becomes furious at the audacity. Our protagonist just watches the fight and concludes that elves and dwarves really don't get along. He then intervenes and asks Captain Kummel to calm down, and the dwarf apologizes for his behavior. The young man turns to one of the elf soldiers and asks where everyone went after the battle. The soldier, with a proud smile, says that the brave Lord Gustav and his knights cleared the area. He explains that they are now leading the main force in pursuit of the remaining bandits. The scene then shows the elf knights chasing the bandits who are running desperately through the forest. An elf soldier then declares that all the loot and prisoners belong to his master Gustav and his knights. He also says that since the others arrived late, they have no right to anything, and the dwarf captain gets angry at the audacity. The dwarf leader replies that they've already been paid, and that the pointy ears can have everything, and the elf becomes enraged at the insult. But our hero has a serious expression on his face, because he feels that something is very wrong here. He reflects that the bandits defeated 3 mercenary groups, but now they were beaten by the elves with no losses. With a keen eye, the protagonist analyzes every detail of the battlefield, because he knows something doesn't add up. At this, he looks at a nearby forest and realizes it's the perfect place for an enemy ambush. The young man then asks the elf soldier if he investigated the forest, and the guard scoffs, asking if he wants to go hunting. With that, the young man understands everything and realizes the enemies retreated on purpose to lure them all into a trap. He then shouts in his thoughts that this is all a huge trap and that they are walking to their doom. But the dwarf captain ignores it and tells everyone to keep advancing because he doesn't want to hear the elf knight's complaints. The protagonist rides up to the dwarf leader and asks him to stop for a moment, and the captain asks what the problem is. With a desperate shout, the young man orders everyone to form a defense line and aim at the forest immediately. The dwarf and the elf are confused, and the soldier says that attacking an empty forest is strange, and that the young man has gone crazy. The hero explains that if there's an ambush, the terrain puts them in great danger, and they can't take the risk. In a mental map, he shows that they are surrounded by enemies, and need to check the area before advancing. The dwarf says they can crush the enemies, since they are just bandits, but the young man disagrees and says they aren't ordinary. With a shout, he says they need to confirm the situation, now before the main force advances any further. The captain looks bored and says that if they are wrong, the elves will humiliate them and call them cowards. But the young warrior shouts that he doesn't care about pride and would throw his honor away to save everyone there. The elf soldier laughs at the situation while the dwarf captain gets annoyed and grumbles at the decision. Though reluctant, the dwarf leader bows and says he will follow the young knight's opinion. The hero is relieved that he managed to convince everyone and thinks that last time he was ignored because he was a nobody. With that, the captain shouts for all troops to get into a defensive formation and for the marksmen to get ready. The dwarf soldiers then run and quickly organize themselves, forming a shield wall for protection. One of the shields is driven into the ground with force, showing the firmness and seriousness of the defense formation. With the shield wall ready, the dwarf leader calls for the marksmen again to begin the attack. The archers get ready, and the captain orders them to aim at the flanks towards the forest area. The dwarves with their cannons then get ready and point their weapons at the suspicious location, awaiting the order. The dwarf leader then gives the order, and a powerful artillery barrage is fired into the dark woods. Arrows and cannonballs fly at high speed, destroying everything in their path in the forest. But a giant creature in heavy armor appears in the middle of the attack and takes all the direct damage. The elf knights who were watching are in total shock, not understanding what is happening there. The dwarf captain is also stunned and realizes there really was an ambush waiting for them in the forest. Amidst the smoke, an enemy with red eyes and a wicked smile emerges, showing its true face.